My wife said our baby was mine, a DNA test proved otherwise, and her biggest secret came out in one night. Posted by u/throwra_life ruin time, 4 hours ago. I am currently sitting in a hotel room that smells like stale smoke and industrial cleaner. My phone has vibrated off the nightstand 3 times in the last 20 minutes. I haven't looked at it. I know who it is. It is my wife, Elena. Or the woman I thought I knew for the last 8 years. Yesterday morning, I was a proud father to a 6-month-old boy named Leo. Today, I am a man with no son, a fraudulent marriage, and a PDF file that I have forwarded to my personal email and printed out twice just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. The prompt for this nightmare was a standard 23andMe health and ancestry kit. I didn't buy it to catch a cheater. I bought it because my brother was recently diagnosed with a hereditary heart condition, and I wanted to know if I was a carrier before we started thinking about a second child. Since Leo was already here, I figured I would swab him too, just to get a head start on his health profile. Elena was weird about it from the start. She told me it was a waste of money. She told me the privacy policies were garbage. She told me they sell your data to insurance companies. I listened, but I did it anyway because I am a stubborn man when it comes to medical safety. I got the email notification at 2 p.m. yesterday while I was at work. I opened it between meetings. The ancestry composition for me was boring. Standard Western European mix. I scrolled down to the DNA relatives section, expecting to see my brother or maybe a distant cousin. I clicked on Leo's profile. Paternal match, 0%. I stared at the screen. I refreshed the page. I logged out and logged back in. I thought maybe I had swapped the samples. I thought maybe the lab mixed up the vials. I called the customer service number immediately. The representative was polite and useless. She told me that sample contamination is rare and that the results are 99.9% accurate. Then I looked closer at the results. The system had identified a maternal match. It listed Elena not as his mother, but as a match sharing approximately 25% of his DNA. Let me repeat that. According to this test, the woman who I watched give birth, the woman who has been breastfeeding this child for 6 months, is statistically his aunt. Or his grandmother. I left work. I didn't tell my boss. I just walked out of the building, got in my car, and drove home. The drive took 40 minutes. I spent every single second of it trying to construct a scenario where this makes sense. IVF mix-up? We didn't do IVF. We conceived naturally after 2 years of trying. Surrogacy? No. I saw her pregnant. I felt the baby kick. I was in the delivery room. I saw the head crown. Unless I was insane. Unless I had hallucinated the last year of my life. I pulled into the driveway. Elena's car was there. The house looked terrifyingly normal. I walked in the front door. The TV was on. Elena was on the couch, folding laundry. Leo was in his swing, asleep. She looked up and smiled. She asked why I was home early. I didn't say anything. I just walked over to the coffee table and placed my phone down, screen up, displaying the results. She looked at it. I watched her face. I expected confusion. I expected her to laugh and say the test was broken. I expected her to get angry that I did the test behind her back. I did not expect the blood to drain from her face so fast that she looked like a corpse. "We need to talk," I said. My voice sounded like it was coming from someone else. She didn't argue. She didn't scream. She just started crying. Not the cute, tearing up kind of crying. The heaving, ugly, primal sobbing of an animal caught in a trap. That was 6 hours ago. I have the full story now. And God, I wish it was just cheating. If she had just slept with a coworker, I could process that. I could divorce her, pay support, and move on. This is not that. This is a level of deception that requires a sociopath to execute. Here is the truth. Elena is 34. Or so I thought. Elena is actually 39. She lied about her age when we met because she thought I wouldn't date an older woman. That is the smallest lie in this pile of garbage. When Elena was 15, she had a child. A daughter. Her parents were strictly religious. They hid the pregnancy. They made her carry to term and then forced her to give the baby up for adoption. It was a closed adoption. Elena never saw the girl again. She moved away, changed her life, met me, and buried that trauma so deep I never even saw a crack in the pavement. 2 years ago, the daughter found her. Her name was Maya. Maya was 22. She was an addict. She was homeless. And she was 7 months pregnant. Elena met her in secret. She gave her money. She tried to get her into rehab. Maya refused. Maya wanted to keep the baby, but she knew she couldn't. She was sick. She had hepatitis C and a heart valve infection from 4 drug use. She knew she was dying. Elena made a choice. A choice that effectively ended my life as I understand it. Elena decided she was going to save her grandchild. But she knew I wouldn't agree to adopt a drug-addicted baby from a secret daughter I didn't know existed. She knew the state would take the baby. She knew the adoption process takes years and background checks she couldn't pass without revealing her past. So she became pregnant. Except she didn't. She started wearing padding. She bought a fake belly online, high-grade silicone, the kind they use in movies. She timed it perfectly. When Maya was 7 months along, Elena announced to me that we were finally expecting. I was overjoyed. I cried. I called my parents. But the sex, you're asking? How did you not know? She claimed she was high risk. Her doctor, who doesn't exist by the way, she was forging medical documents on Photoshop, supposedly put her on pelvic rest. We stopped having sex. I respected it because I wanted this baby so bad. When I felt the baby kick, she would manipulate the silicone or just press my hand at the right moment. I was so desperate to believe it that I never questioned why her skin felt slightly different or why she always wore high-waisted maternity pants even to bed. When it came time for the birth, she staged a crisis. She told me her water broke while I was on my quarterly business trip in Chicago. I rushed to the airport, but by the time I landed, Leo was already born. She claimed it was a precipitous labor. She birthed him at a birthing center that she had supposedly vetted. In reality, Maya gave birth in a motel room with a midwife Elena paid cash to keep quiet. Maya handed the baby to Elena. Elena took the baby to a different hospital, claiming she had a home birth and needed a checkup, registering him under our last name. Maya died of an overdose 3 weeks later. Elena paid for the cremation out of our joint savings account, listing it as a spa retreat expense. So, Leo is not my son. Leo is my wife's grandson. The biological father? Some dealer Maya was running with. Unknown. I sat on the couch and listened to this. I listened to her explain how she did it for us. How she wanted to give me a son. How she couldn't let her own flesh and blood disappear into the foster system again. She kept trying to touch my hand. She kept saying, "But you love him. You're his father in every way that matters." And the worst part is, she's right. I do love him. I love that little boy more than I love myself. I have walked the floor with him at 3 a.m. I have cleaned his vomit. I have planned his future. But he is a lie. He is a stolen child. Technically, this is kidnapping. Or birth certificate fraud. Or both. I asked her one question. Does anyone else know? She looked me in the eye. My mother knows. She helped me pay the midwife. My mother-in-law. The woman who knitted Leo a blanket. The woman who comes over for Sunday dinner. She was in on it. I stood up. I went to the nursery. I looked at Leo. He was sleeping, his little chest rising and falling. He looks like her. I always thought he looked like her. Now I know why. I packed a bag. Elena stood in the doorway, sobbing, blocking my exit. "If you leave, you're abandoning your son," she screamed. "He's not my son," I said. "And you're not my wife. You're a stranger." I pushed past her. I drove to this hotel. I have been here for hours. I have researched the laws. Since I signed the birth certificate, I am the legal father. I am on the hook for child support. If I report this, Elena goes to prison. Leo goes to foster care. If I stay, I live a lie with a woman who is capable of orchestrating a felony-level deception over the course of a year. I don't know what to do. Every time I close my eyes, I see Leo's face. I see him smiling at me. And then I see the percentage on the screen. 0%. My lawyer just emailed me back. He wants to meet tomorrow morning. He says this is the most insane case he has ever heard of. I need to sleep, but I can't. I keep thinking about Maya. The girl who died alone in a motel so my wife could steal her baby. I keep thinking about the day we gave birth. I was so happy. I was the happiest man on earth. It was all fake. I will update after I talk to the lawyer. Right now, I just need to breathe. Update one time, 24 hours later. I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling until the sun came up, then I showered, put on a suit, and went to meet my lawyer, David. David is a shark. He's handled my business contracts for years. I've never seen him look rattled. Today, he looked rattled. I laid it all out. The DNA test. The confession. The dead daughter. The fake pregnancy. He sat back in his chair and took off his glasses. Okay, he said. This is a mess. A radioactive mess. Here is the legal reality, according to David. Paternity. Since I signed the birth certificate, I am the legal father. In our state, disestablishing paternity is possible, especially with proof of fraud, but it is not automatic. It requires a court order. Criminal liability. Elena committed several crimes. Fraud. Forgery, the medical records. Conspiracy, her mother. Potential kidnapping, depending on the custody status of Maya's baby at the time of transfer. If I go to the police, she will be arrested. The child, if Elena is arrested and I disestablish paternity, Leo becomes a ward of the state. He goes into the system. Since Elena is the biological grandmother, the state might look to next of kin, but if the grandmother is a felon who facilitated an illegal adoption, she won't get him. So what do you want? David asked me. Do you want to burn her down? Do you want the kid? Do you want out? I sat there and realized I didn't have an answer. I want to hurt her. I want her to feel the pain I feel. But I don't want to hurt Leo. Leo is innocent. Leo is a victim. I told David to draft divorce papers. I told him to prepare a petition to disestablish paternity, but not to file it yet. I need leverage. I left his office and turned my phone back on. 47 missed calls. 30 from Elena. 10 from her mother. 7 from my own mother. Elena must have called her. I drove back to the house. I had to face her. I had to see Leo. When I walked in, the atmosphere was suffocating. Elena was sitting at the kitchen table. Her mother, Joyce, was there too. Joyce looked terrified. Good. Where have you been? Elena asked. Her eyes were swollen shut. Lawyer, I said. Joyce stood up. You can't ruin this family, Mark. We did what we had to do. That baby needed a home. I looked at Joyce. You watched me hold him. You watched me cry in the nursery. And you laughed at me behind my back. We didn't laugh, Joyce snapped. We were terrified. We saved him. From who? His mother? You let his mother die alone. She was a junkie. Joyce screamed. She would have sold him. Stop it. Elena slammed her hand on the table. She looked at me. Mark, please. I will sign whatever you want. I will give you the house. I will give you everything. Just don't take him away from me. And don't send me to jail. I'm not the one who decides that, I said. The law decides that. We can fix this, she said. We can just go on. No one has to know. You love him. You know you do. She was weaponizing my love for the child she stole. It was manipulative and brilliant and sick. I went upstairs to the nursery. Leo was awake. He was chewing on his foot. He saw me and made that gurgling noise he makes when he's happy. My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. I picked him up. He smelled like baby powder and milk. He felt solid. Real. I held him for 10 minutes. Then I put him down. I went back downstairs. I am filing for divorce, I said. Elena gasped. And, I continued, I am going to petition for full custody of Leo. Silence. Absolute silence. You can't, Elena whispered. He's not yours. Legally, he is, I said. I signed the certificate. You made sure of that. You wanted a father for him? Congratulations, you got one. But you don't get to be the mother. You are unfit. You are a criminal. You are mentally unstable. I am his grandmother, she shrieked. I am his blood. And I am the man who has raised him, I said. I am going to leverage your fraud against you. If you fight me, I go to the police. I turn over the emails, the texts. I had downloaded her phone backup onto the cloud while she was sleeping months ago, habit of a tech guy, and the confession I just recorded on my phone in my pocket. Her face went white. You recorded this? Joyce hissed. Every word, I lied. I hadn't recorded the kitchen conversation, but they didn't know that. I want you out of the house, I said. Both of you. By tonight. This is my house. Elena yelled. And there are cocaine residues in the blood of the biological mother you buried, I said, bluffing again. Do you want CPS involved? Do you want a homicide investigation into how Maya really died? That broke them. They didn't know how much I knew or what I could prove. Fear is a powerful motivator. They left an hour ago. Elena packed a bag for herself. She tried to take Leo. I stood in front of the door. He stays, I said. She looked at me with pure hatred. You are stealing my grandson. You stole him first, I said. She left. So here I am. Alone in a 4-bedroom house with a baby that isn't mine, preparing for a war I didn't start. I have to feed Leo in 20 minutes. I have to figure out how to explain this to my family. I have to figure out how to live with the fact that my marriage was a long con. But looking at Leo, I know I made the right choice. He deserves a chance. He deserves a parent who didn't use him as a prop to fix their own trauma. I don't know if I can win this, but I'm going to try. Update 2 days later. The war has started. Elena didn't just go quietly into the night. I should have known she wouldn't. She went to the offensive. Yesterday morning, the police knocked on my door. Elena had filed a report claiming I was abusive. She claimed I had threatened to kill her and the baby. She requested an emergency restraining order and an order for me to surrender the child. Luckily, I had David. And luckily, I had installed security cameras inside the house 6 months ago to monitor the nanny. We never hired one, but I kept the cameras. When the officers arrived, they were aggressive. They treated me like a suspect. I remained calm. I showed them the footage of the confrontation in the kitchen. It showed me standing still, speaking calmly, while Elena and Joyce screamed and threw things. It showed Elena lunging at me before leaving. It didn't show any threats of death. It showed a man discovering a fraud. The police watched the video. Their demeanor changed. They didn't arrest me. They told me it was a civil matter, but they would file a report stating the allegations were unfounded based on video evidence. But that was just the opening salvo. My parents arrived at noon. Elena had called them. She told them I was having a mental breakdown. She told them I was on drugs, ironic. She told them I was hallucinating that Leo wasn't mine. I had to sit my parents down at the dining table. My mother, a devout Catholic, and my father, a retired military officer. I showed them the DNA test. My mother cried. My father went silent. She faked it? My mother asked, her hand over her mouth. But the baby shower, the belly. All fake, I said. Leo is her daughter's child. My father stood up and walked to the window. He looked out at the street for a long time. Then he turned around. Where is she? He asked. I don't know, I said. Likely at her mother's. Good, my father said. She is not welcome in this family. We protect our own. Is Leo our own? I asked. This was the question I was terrified to ask. They aren't related to him. He is a stranger's blood to them. My mother stood up and walked over to the playpen where Leo was banging a rattle against the bars. She picked him up. She kissed his head. He is my grandson, she said fiercely. I don't care what a piece of paper says. I have loved him since the day I thought he was born. That doesn't turn off. I broke down. I sobbed in my mother's arms like a child. It was the first time I had really cried since the email. With my parents' support, I felt stronger. But the legal battle is getting ugly. David called me this afternoon. Elena has retained a lawyer. A high-profile family law attorney. They are filing for divorce and asserting that since the birth certificate was based on fraud, which they are now admitting to, strategically, paternity should be voided, and custody should revert to the biological grandmother, Elena. Their strategy is bold. They are admitting the crime to get the kid. They are banking on the fact that the court will prioritize biological connection, grandmother, over non-biological legal father, me, and that criminal charges regarding the birth certificate won't result in jail time, just probation. They are gambling that the best interest of the child standard will favor the blood relative. David says it's a risky move for them. If the judge sees the fraud as indicative of poor moral character, which it obviously is, Elena could lose everything. But if the judge is a traditionalist who values blood ties, I could lose Leo. I spent the night going through Elena's things. I needed more evidence. I needed to know the extent of the lie. I found a burner phone taped under the bottom of her vanity drawer. I charged it. It was unlocked. The texts were horrific. To Joyce, Mom, he bought the silicone belly. He has no idea. He's such an idiot. To unsaved number, presumably the midwife cash is ready. $5K. Make sure the birth record says home birth. No hospitals. To Maya, daughter, you are ruining everything. Just give me the baby and disappear. I will give you the money for the fix. Just go. I read that last one 3 times. I will give you the money for the fix. She didn't just wait for Maya to die. She enabled the overdose. She gave an addict money to go away, knowing what she would spend it on. I felt sick. This wasn't just adoption fraud. This was practically manslaughter. I screenshotted everything. I sent it to David. This is the nuke, David texted back. If we show this to a judge, she never sees sunlight again, let alone the child. I looked at Leo. If I use this, his grandmother goes to prison for a long time. He loses the only biological link he has left. But if I don't use it, she might raise him. She might do to him what she did to Maya. I made my decision. I am going to the police tomorrow morning. I am turning over the phone. I am turning over the texts. I am burning it all down. Update 3 time. 1 week later. The house is quiet. Too quiet. I did it. I went to the precinct. I spoke to a detective in the Special Victims Unit. When I laid out the photos, the texts, and the DNA results, he didn't blink. He called in the district attorney. They arrested Elena 3 days ago. They picked her up at her mother's house. She was charged with birth certificate fraud, custodial interference, and because of the texts, involuntary manslaughter, though the charge is pending investigation into Maya's death specifics. Joyce was arrested as an accessory. The fallout was nuclear. My phone has been ringing non-stop with reporters. The local news picked up the story. Local mother faked pregnancy, stole dead daughter's baby. It's everywhere. I can't turn on the TV. But the hardest part wasn't the police. It was Child Protective Services. Because Elena is in jail and I am legally the father, but biologically unrelated, CPS had to open a case. They came to the house. They inspected everything. They interviewed me for 4 hours. They asked about my relationship with Elena. They asked if I knew. They asked why I should keep a child I am not related to. I told the social worker, I am the only father he has ever known. I am the only stable person in this entire equation. She looked at me sympathetically, but she said, the state prioritizes biological family. We have to search for the father. The father. The unknown dealer. They ran Leo's DNA through the criminal database. They found a match. His name is Travis. He is 24. He has a rap sheet for possession, grand theft auto, and assault. He is currently incarcerated in a state penitentiary 3 counties over. I almost laughed when they told me. Of course. Of course the biological father is a violent felon. Because he is in prison, he cannot take custody. But he has rights. He can object to my adoption, if I try to adopt Leo formally as a single parent. He can demand visitation. David is working overtime. We are filing for an emergency order to terminate Travis's parental rights based on abandonment and unfitness. We are also filing to terminate Elena's rights based on, well, everything. I visited Elena in jail yesterday. Against David's advice. I needed to see her. She looked terrible. The orange jumpsuit washed her out. She wasn't the polished, beautiful woman I married. She looked like a stranger. Why? I asked her through the glass. Why didn't you just tell me? We could have adopted him legally. We could have helped Maya. She looked at the table. You would have judged her. You would have looked at her and seen a junkie. I wanted Leo to be perfect. I wanted him to be ours. He was perfect, I said. You made him a crime scene. I love him, she whispered. You love yourself, I said. You wanted a do-over. You failed Maya, so you tried to steal her son to make yourself feel like a good mother. It was never about Leo. It was about your guilt. She didn't answer. She just cried. I stood up. I am going to raise him. I am going to tell him the truth when he is old enough. He will know his mother loved him enough to try to keep him. And he will know his grandmother was a monster who bought his mother's death. You can't prove that, she hissed, her eyes snapping up. I have the texts, Elena. Money for the fix. It's over. I walked out. I am currently on administrative leave from work. My boss was understanding, mostly because he saw my name in the newspaper. I am alone with Leo. We have a routine. Bottle, play, nap, bottle, bath, sleep. It is the only thing keeping me sane. I look at him and I wonder how much of this trauma is in his DNA. I wonder if he will grow up to have his father's temper or his mother's addiction or his grandmother's deceit. But then he smiles at me. He grabs my finger with his tiny hand. And I know that nurture has to win. It has to. I am his father. Biology is a suggestion. DNA is a blueprint, but I am the builder. I will update if anything major happens with the court case. For now, thank you for the support. It's been a lonely week. Update 3 months later. I didn't plan on updating this again, but the messages in my inbox keep piling up asking for closure. The dust has settled, somewhat. Elena, she took a plea deal. To avoid the manslaughter charge, which was hard to prove definitively as causing the death, she pleaded guilty to egregious fraud, forgery, and custodial interference. She was sentenced to 8 years in state prison. She will be eligible for parole in 5. I was in the courtroom when they sentenced her. She didn't look at me. She didn't look at her lawyer. She just stared at the wall. I felt nothing. No satisfaction. Just exhaustion. Joyce, she got probation and house arrest. She is old, and the court went easy on her. She is barred from contacting me or Leo. She sends letters to my lawyer begging for photos. I burn them. Travis, the biological father, this was the wild card. He was released from prison last month. He contacted David. He wanted money. He said he would sign over his rights if I paid him $10,000. It felt like buying a child. It felt dirty. David told me it was essentially extortion, but it was also the fastest way to end this. If we fought him in court, it could take years. Travis could drag it out, demand visitation, force Leo to visit him in a halfway house. I paid him. I liquidated my 401k. I wrote a check. He signed the papers relinquishing all parental rights and consenting to my adoption of the child. He took the money and bought a motorcycle. He crashed it 2 weeks later. He's back in the hospital. I don't wish ill on anyone, but karma seems to be working overtime lately. Leo, the adoption was finalized yesterday. The judge was a stern woman in her 60s. She reviewed the file. She looked at the mountain of tragedy that preceded this moment. Then she looked at me, holding Leo in a suit that was too big for him. This child has had a very difficult start, she said. He needs stability. Mr. Thompson, are you prepared to be that stability? I am, I said. Then I signed this order with pleasure. She banged the gavel. Leo is officially my son. Not biologically, but legally, morally, and spiritually. His last name is mine. His birth certificate has been amended, not to list Elena, but to list me as the sole parent. We moved. I couldn't stay in that house. Too many ghosts. I sold it and bought a smaller place near my parents. They help me with childcare. My dad is teaching Leo how to crawl. My mom sings him songs. It's hard. Being a single dad is the hardest thing I've ever done. I am tired all the time. I have trust issues that will probably require a decade of therapy to unpack. I date no one. I trust no one. When a woman smiles at me at the grocery store, I wonder what she is hiding. But then there are the moments. Last night, Leo had a nightmare. He woke up screaming. I went in, picked him up, and rocked him. He buried his face in my neck and sighed, instantly calming down because he knew he was safe. He knew I was there. He doesn't know about the DNA test. He doesn't know about the motel room or the silicone belly or the money for the fix. He just knows I am Dad. And for now, that is enough. Edit. To the people asking if I ever visited Elena again, no. She writes me letters from prison. I put them in a box in the attic. Maybe one day when Leo is 18, I will give them to him. Maybe not. That's a decision for the future. For today, we are just going to the park. End of thread, comments locked. The sound of a deadbolt sliding into place has a specific finality to it. It is a heavy metallic clunk that signifies the end of access, the end of welcome, and in this specific case, the end of a 20-year charade. I stood on the porch of the sprawling colonial revival on Camelot Drive, watching the locksmith pack his drill into his yellow and black tool bag. He handed me a set of 4 shiny brass keys. I took them. They felt cold in my hand. Behind the heavy oak door, the house was silent. Empty. For the first time in 2 decades, the air inside wasn't poisoned by the scent of expensive perfume masking the smell of rot, or the shrill voice of my mother-in-law explaining to me why I would never be good enough to scrub her floors, let alone marry her son. My husband, Mark, sat in my car at the curb. He wasn't crying. He was staring at the dashboard with a 1,000-yard stare of a soldier who had just survived a war he never wanted to fight. He wasn't sad they were gone. He was shocked that we had actually pulled the trigger. People often say revenge is a dish best served cold. I disagree. Revenge is a dish best served legally, meticulously, and with a paper trail so thick it could choke a horse. My in-laws, let's call them Richard and Victoria, spent the better part of my adult life treating me like a parasitic infection that had latched onto their golden boy. They mocked my background, sneered at my career, and belittled my family. They fancied themselves American aristocracy, people of status and significant means. They were wrong about the status. They were definitely wrong about the means. But the thing they were most wrong about was the house. They spent the last 10 years bragging about their estate, hosting galas in the dining room, and threatening to ban me from the property whenever I failed to meet their impossible standards. They didn't know that every time they threatened to kick me out of their house, they were threatening the only person who was keeping a roof over their heads. They didn't know that the faceless investment firm they paid rent to, when they bothered to pay it, was just a filing cabinet in my home office. They didn't know that I was the landlord. Here is how a girl from the trailer park ended up owning the manor of the people who hated her, and how I finally decided to evict them. Part 1. The wrong side of the ledger. To understand the sheer magnitude of their delusion, you have to understand where we started. I met Mark in college. State school. I was there on a patchwork of academic scholarships and 3 part-time jobs. Mark was there because his parents had cut him off for a semester to teach him a lesson about gratitude after he crashed a car they bought him. They expected him to grovel. Instead, he got a job at the campus library, met me, and learned how to budget for ramen noodles. Mark was soft when I met him. Not weak, just unhardened. He had spent his life being managed by Victoria, a woman whose narcissism was so dense it had its own gravitational pull. Richard was her enforcer, a man who believed net worth was directly correlated to human worth. When Mark first brought me home to meet them, I drove a 10-year-old Honda Civic with a dent in the passenger door. I parked it in the driveway of their immaculate suburban fortress. The grass was cut to military precision. The hedges looked like they were terrified to grow a leaf out of place. Victoria opened the door before we even knocked. She didn't look at Mark. She looked at my shoes. They were scuff-proof white-dressing shoes because I had a shift right after dinner. "You must be the friend," she said. Not a question. A categorization. "I'm his girlfriend," I said, extending a hand. "I'm Sarah." She didn't take my hand. She turned to Mark. "Richard is in the study. He wants to know why there is an oil stain on the driveway now." That was the tone for the next 5 years. I was the help. I was the gold digger. I was the mistake. It didn't matter that I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in accounting and immediately went into forensic auditing. To them, I was just someone looking for a payout. When Mark proposed, they threatened to disown him. They told him he was throwing his life away on trash. They refused to pay for the wedding. That was fine, we paid for it ourselves. We had a small ceremony in a park. They showed up in black, sitting in the back row like they were attending a funeral. At the reception, Richard got drunk on the wine we paid for and told my father, a retired welder with hands like leather, that it was quaint how the working class tried to imitate elegance. My dad, God rest his soul, just smiled and said, "It's amazing what you can build when you actually work for it, Richard." Richard didn't like that. By the time we were 30, Mark and I were doing well. I was a senior auditor for a major firm, specializing in asset recovery. Mark was in logistics management. We lived well below our means. We drove reliable cars, maxed out our 401ks, and lived in a modest townhouse. Richard and Victoria lived in the Camelot Drive house. It was a 4,000-square-foot money pit. They drove leased Mercedes. They went on vacations they put on credit cards. They were leveraged to the eyeballs, playing a shell game with debt that I could spot from a mile away. They constantly critiqued our lifestyle. "I don't know how you live in that shoebox," Victoria would say when she visited our townhouse, looking around as if she expected to catch a disease. "And Sarah, really, you're still driving that Toyota?" It's embarrassing for Mark. People talk. Let them talk, I'd say. It's paid for. Debt is a tool, Sarah, Richard would lecture, swirling scotch he couldn't afford. You have to spend money to project power. But I suppose they don't teach high finance in wherever you're from. I bit my tongue. I bit my tongue so hard for so long I'm surprised I have any of it left. I knew the crash was coming. You can't live on a liquidity crunch forever. Part 2, The Crash. The year Mark turned 32, the house of cards fell. Richard had been involved in some speculative commercial real estate deals that went belly up. At the same time, the adjustable rate mortgage on the Camelot house reset. Their payments nearly doubled overnight. They had no savings. They had drained their retirement accounts to fund their image. Mark got the call at 2 a.m. It was Victoria, hysterical. The bank had initiated foreclosure proceedings. They were 3 months behind. The auction was scheduled for 30 days out. "You have to help us," she screamed loud enough for me to hear through the receiver. "We can't lose the house. It's our legacy. It's your inheritance." Mark looked at me, pale and shaking. He was still terrified of them, still desperate for their approval. "What can we do? We can't give them the money. We don't have that kind of cash liquid, and even if we did. If we give them cash, they'll burn it," I said. I was already pulling up my laptop, logging into the county clerk's database. I wanted to see the numbers. It was bad. They owed more than the house was worth, but the market had taken a dip. The bank just wanted it off their books. "I can't let them be homeless," Mark said. "They're awful, Sarah, I know. But they're my parents." I looked at my husband. I loved him. I hated that they made him feel this way, like he owed them his survival when they had given him nothing but complexes. I knew that if we just bailed them out, they would never learn. They would treat us like an ATM and continue to abuse me. But I saw an opportunity. A way to control the damage and perhaps secure a future asset. "We aren't going to give them money," I said. "And we aren't going to co-sign a loan." "Then what?" "We buy the house," I said. Mark stared at me. "You just said." "Not us," I corrected. "I have an LLC set up for some consulting work I was planning to do. Vanguard Holdings. We use our savings to put a down payment on the house as an investment property. We buy it at the foreclosure auction or a short sale pre-auction. The bank gets paid, the parents stay." "They'll never agree to sell to you," Mark said. "Richard would rather live under a bridge than sign a deed over to you." "They won't know it's me," I said. "I'll hire a property management company. A face. They handle the transaction. They handle the lease." To Richard and Victoria, some faceless investor bought their debt and is allowing them to rent the house back to keep up appearances. They get to stay in their house. We get an asset. But they pay rent. Market rate. Mark was silent for a long time. "You want to be their landlord?" "I want to control the asset," I said. And I want to ensure they can't leverage it again. It's the only way they stay indoors, Mark. He agreed. It took some maneuvering. I contacted a lawyer friend of mine, Dave, who acted as the registered agent for Vanguard Holdings. We approached the bank. The bank was happy to avoid a protracted eviction and auction process. We made an offer that covered the outstanding principal. It wiped out Richard and Victoria's equity, which was zero anyway, but it cleared the debt. The deal was presented to them by the property manager, a stern woman named Mrs. Higgins who took no nonsense. She told them that an investment group, Vanguard Holdings, was acquiring the property but was willing to offer a leaseback option due to their tenure in the community. They signed. They didn't even read the paperwork. They were just so relieved they didn't have to admit to the country club that they were broke. The day the deed transferred, I sat in my home office and held the paper. The house on Camelot Drive belonged to Vanguard Holdings. And I was the sole member of Vanguard Holdings. I owned them. Part 3. The Tenants from Hell. For the first 2 years, things were relatively quiet. They paid the rent, mostly on time. Richard got a consulting gig that paid enough to cover their expenses, provided they stopped buying luxury cars. They didn't stop, of course, but they managed the rent. The dynamic, however, shifted in a way I hadn't anticipated. Instead of being humble about losing their ownership, they became even more insufferable. They crafted a narrative that they had sold the house for tax purposes to free up capital for international investments. "It's just smarter business," Richard told us at Thanksgiving, carving the turkey like he was the King of England. "Why tie up capital in real estate when the market is so volatile? We have a wonderful arrangement with the management group. They handle all the maintenance. I don't have to lift a finger." I chewed my stuffing and said nothing. I knew for a fact he had called the management hotline 3 times that week to complain that a light bulb in the foyer was too dim. "Must be nice," I said. "Renting has its perks." Victoria sniffed. "Oh, Sarah, don't try to compare your little townhouse situation to our portfolio management. It's not the same." I looked at Mark. He was drinking wine aggressively. The cracks started to show in year 3. Richard lost the consulting gig. The rent checks started arriving late. Then they started bouncing. Mrs. Higgins, my property manager, earned every cent of her commission. She sent the standard late notices. Victoria called Mark, weeping. "This horrible management company. They're harassing us over a few days. Mark, you need to call them. Tell them who we are." "I can't do that, Mom," Mark said, putting the phone on speaker so I could hear. "I don't know them. It's a corporation." "Well, lend us the money," she demanded. "Just for this month. The liquidity is tied up in Zurich." There was no money in Zurich. "We can't," Mark said, reciting the script we had practiced. "Our money is tied up too. Sarah's car needs a new transmission." "Sarah's car," she spat. "Always Sarah. If you had married a woman with a dowry, we wouldn't be having this conversation." I signaled Mark to cut the call. He did. I authorized Mrs. Higgins to waive the late fee just once, as a courtesy to long-term tenants. I wanted to see if they would stabilize. They didn't. They started treating the house like a hotel. They demanded renovations. They wanted the kitchen updated. They claimed the granite, which was perfectly fine, was dated and depressing. Mrs. Higgins forwarded me the email. Subject: Urgent renovation request from tenant body. Mr. Tenant states that the kitchen is uninhabitable due to aesthetic distress. Demands marble countertops and Viking appliances. Estimates cost at $60,000. Threatens to withhold rent until conditions are improved. I laughed so hard I nearly choked. I wrote back, "Request denied. Remind tenant that cosmetic upgrades are the tenant's responsibility, subject to owner approval, and become property of the landlord upon installation. Rent withholding for aesthetics is grounds for eviction." The next time we visited, the atmosphere was frigid. The kitchen was untouched, but they had clearly tried to paint the dining room themselves and made a mess of the trim. "The management is slumlords," Richard declared. "Absolute slumlords. We ask for basic amenities and they cite the lease. I'm thinking of suing." "Suing?" I asked. "On what grounds?" "Emotional distress," he said. "And breach of implied warranty of habitability. The aesthetics are part of the lifestyle we paid for." I don't think that's how the law works, Richard, I said gently. What would you know? He sneered. You're an accountant. You count beans. I deal with equity. Actually, I said, I deal with fraud and asset recovery. I know a lot about contracts. Stick to your calculator, Sarah. Leave the business to the men. Mark stood up. Don't talk to her like that. Sit down, boy, Richard barked. Until you pay the mortgage on this house, you don't get a vote. The irony was palpable. Mark looked at me. I shook my head slightly. Not yet. Part 4, The Escalation. Years 4 through 7 were a war of attrition. They paid rent sporadically. I covered the mortgage shortfall with my own salary, essentially subsidizing their hatred of me. Why did I do it? Because every month they stayed there was a month I was building equity in $1 million property in a prime school district, and every month they dug their hole deeper. Also, I knew that if I evicted them, they would move in with us. That was a fate worse than bankruptcy. But then, I got pregnant. When our daughter Lily was born, the dynamic shifted from financial abuse to emotional terrorism. Victoria decided that she was the matriarch and I was merely the vessel. She criticized my parenting, my breastfeeding, the clothes I bought, the nursery colors. She came over unannounced constantly. One afternoon, she arrived at our townhouse while I was on a conference call. I didn't answer the door. She banged on it for 20 minutes, then called the police to request a wellness check, claiming she heard the baby crying and thought I had harmed her. The police arrived. I had to end my call with a client to explain that my mother-in-law was insane. The officer was sympathetic but annoyed. When I confronted Victoria, she said, I have a right to see my grandchild. If you keep obstructing me, we will sue for grandparents' rights. Richard has already spoken to his lawyers. They didn't have lawyers. They had debt collectors. You don't want to go to court, Victoria, I warned. Try me, she hissed. We have resources you can't imagine. We could take Lily from you. We could prove you're unfit. Working mothers are always neglectful. That was the moment. That was the crack in the dam. Financial abuse I could handle. Insulting me I could handle. Threatening my child? Threatening to use the legal system to take my daughter? No. I went home and told Mark. I'm done. I know, he said. I'm done too. She called the cops, Sarah. She crossed the line. I'm raising the rent, I said. Mark looked at me. How much? Market value, I said. They've been paying what we negotiated 7 years ago. The market has exploded. I'm raising it to fair market value. It's a 40% increase. They can't afford that. I know, I said. That's the point. Mrs. Higgins sent the notice. New lease terms. $4,500 a month, up from $3,200. Take it or leave it. They exploded. They called us screaming about the greedy corporation. They demanded we give them money to cover the increase. We can't, Mark said. We have a child now. We have expenses. You're selfish. Victoria screamed. After everything we did for you. They refused to sign the new lease. They went into holdover status. In our state, that meant they were now month to month at a premium rate. They stopped paying entirely. Richard sent a letter to Vanguard Holdings. It was a masterpiece of delusion. He claimed he had adverse possession, he didn't, and that he had improved the property significantly, he hadn't, and that he was now withholding rent until the illegal increase was rescinded. I let them dig. I let them go 3 months without paying. I wanted the debt to be significant. I wanted it to be undeniable. Then, the pipe burst. It was a cold winter. A pipe in the upstairs master bath froze and burst while they were away for a weekend at a casino, spending money they didn't have. The water damage was significant. It ruined the hardwood in the dining room. They came home and, instead of calling the emergency maintenance line, they called a shady contractor buddy of Richard's to fix it and bill the management company. The contractor did a hack job. He cut into a load-bearing beam to replace the plumbing. When Mrs. Higgins did the quarterly inspection, she saw the damage. She saw the structural compromise. She called me immediately. The integrity of the master suite is compromised, she said. This is a major violation of the lease. Unauthorized structural modification. Negligence causing damage. Serve them, I said. Eviction. Notice to quit, I said. Breach of contract. And demand for payment of damages. Part 5. The lawsuit. This is where they made their fatal mistake. Instead of packing up, Richard decided to fight. He found a lawyer who worked on contingency, a strip mall ambulance chaser type. They countersued Vanguard Holdings. The lawsuit alleged that the burst pipe was due to landlord negligence, maintenance failure, and that the resulting mold, there was none we checked, had caused Victoria severe respiratory distress. They were suing for $500,000 in damages and the deed to the house. It was bold. It was stupid. My lawyer, Dave, called me. Sarah, they filed. They want a deposition with a representative of Vanguard Holdings. Schedule it, I said. You know you have to appear, Dave said. If you appear, the gig is up. I know, I said. I'm ready. The deposition was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in a conference room downtown. I took the day off work. I dressed in my best suit, a charcoal gray power suit that cost more than Richard's car. I pulled my hair back. I put on the pearl earrings Mark bought me for our 10th anniversary. I arrived at the office early. I sat in the separate waiting room. I saw them walk in. Richard was wearing a suit that was 10 years out of style and slightly too tight. Victoria was wearing fur, despite it being October. They looked smug. They looked like people who thought they were about to scam a faceless insurance company out of a fortune. Mark was with me. He held my hand. You got this. We got this, I corrected. We waited until everyone was seated. The court reporter, their lawyer, my lawyer. Dave texted me, showtime. I walked into the conference room. Richard was mid-sentence, loudly telling his lawyer, this company has been absent for years, total slumlords, we've never even met the owner. He stopped when I walked in. He looked at me, then looked behind me, expecting someone else. Sarah. Victoria asked, her voice dripping with confusion and disdain. What are you doing here? Did Mark send you to beg us for forgiveness? I didn't say a word. I walked to the head of the table, pulled out the leather chair, and sat down. I placed a thick binder on the table. The label on the binder read, Vanguard Holdings versus Tenant. You're in the wrong seat, Richard snapped. That's for the owner. My lawyer, Dave, cleared his throat. Actually, Mr. Tenant, this is the owner. Sarah Miller is the sole member and managing partner of Vanguard Holdings, LLC. The silence that followed was absolute. It was a vacuum. It sucked the air out of the room. Richard's face went purple. That's impossible. She's a broke accountant. I'm a forensic accountant, I corrected, speaking for the first time. My voice was steady, calm, and cold. And I have owned the property at Camelot Drive for 7 years. I bought your debt. I saved you from foreclosure. And I have been subsidizing your lifestyle for nearly a decade. Victoria made a noise like a dying cat. You? You own our house. My house, I said. It has been my house since the day the bank was going to throw you on the street. Mark and I decided to buy it to give you a place to live. All we asked was that you pay the rent and respect the property. This is a trick, Richard stammered. This is fraud. It's an LLC, I said. It's perfectly legal. Would you like to see the deed? The mortgage payments? The bank transfers from my personal account to cover the months you missed. I opened the binder. I slid a spreadsheet across the table. Here is a ledger of every late payment, every waived fee, and the cost of the unauthorized repairs you attempted. You owe Vanguard Holdings me $42,000 in back rent and damages. Their lawyer picked up the spreadsheet. He looked at it. He looked at me. He looked at Richard. Is this accurate? The lawyer asked Richard. She's lying. Richard shouted. She's a vindictive little. Mr. Tenant, my lawyer interrupted. We have the bank records. We have the emails with Mrs. Higgins. We have the inspection reports. And regarding your lawsuit for negligence, the pipe burst because you turned the heat off to save money while you went to a casino. We have the utility records showing the thermostat data. I slid the utility report across the table. You sued me, I said, looking Victoria in the eye. You sued the hand that fed you. You threatened to take my daughter. You called me trash in my own house. Victoria was trembling. Mark knew. Mark knew this whole time. Mark helped me set up the LLC, I lied. Mark didn't help set it up, but he knew. I wanted them to know they couldn't wedge us apart. We are a team. Unlike you. I want you out, I said. I am countersuing for the back rent, the damages, and legal fees. But I will drop the financial claim if you vacate the property in 30 days. Keys on the counter. Broom clean. If you leave quietly, I won't bankrupt you. Again. Richard looked at his lawyer. Do something. The lawyer closed his briefcase. Mr. Tenant, if half of this documentation is valid, you have zero case. You are suing your landlord for a condition you caused, while in arrears on rent. And the landlord is your daughter-in-law who has been giving you a below-market rate. I suggest you take the deal. Richard looked at me. The arrogance was gone. He looked small. He looked old. You can't do this to family, he whispered. You stopped being family when you threatened my child, I said. Now, I'm just your landlord. And you are terrible tenants. Part 6. The eviction. They didn't leave in 30 days. They dragged it out. They stopped packing. They thought I was bluffing. I wasn't. On day 31, I filed for eviction. In our state, because of the clear breach of lease and the non-payment, it was fast-tracked. We went before a judge. Richard tried to give a speech about filial piety. The judge, a woman who looked like she had no time for nonsense, looked at the ledger. Sir, you haven't paid rent in 6 months. You damaged the structural integrity of the home. Eviction granted. You have 48 hours to vacate, or the sheriff will remove you. 48 hours later, the sheriff met us at the property. Richard and Victoria were frantically throwing clothes into garbage bags. The furniture, most of which they had sold off over the years to fund their lifestyle, was gone. The house was a shell. The walls were scuffed. The carpets were stained. The smell of mold from the bathroom they ruined hung in the air. They walked out the front door, carrying 2 suitcases each. They tried to stare me down, but they couldn't. They wouldn't look at Mark. As they reached the end of the driveway, waiting for their Uber, because the leased Mercedes had been repossessed the week prior, Victoria turned back. I hope you're happy, she screamed. You stole our home. I bought your home, I said loud enough for the neighbors to hear. And then I let you live in it for 7 years. You're welcome. The Uber took them away. They moved into a small apartment 2 towns over. Last I heard, Richard is trying to sell life insurance, and Victoria is telling anyone who will listen that her son and his demon wife cheated them out of their estate. Mark and I stood in the foyer. It was quiet. It's a wreck, Mark said, looking at the water stain on the ceiling. It's a project, I said. But it's ours. Really ours. We spent the next 6 months renovating. We ripped out the moldy drywall. We refinished the floors. We painted over the beige walls with bright, happy colors. We made it a home. We moved in last spring. Lily loves the backyard. She has a swing set where Richard used to yell at kids for stepping on the grass. We haven't spoken to them since the eviction. Mark blocked their numbers. Occasionally, a letter arrives from them, usually a guilt trip or a request for money. I put them in a box labeled evidence, just in case. But today, standing here with the new keys, I don't feel anger. I don't feel triumph. I just feel relief. I walked to the kitchen, the one they wanted me to spend $60,000 on. I ran my hand over the laminate counter they hated so much. I picked up my phone and called my dad. Hey Dad, I said. Hey kiddo. How's the palace? It's good, Dad. It needs work. But you know what? What? It's amazing what you can build when you actually work for it. He laughed. That it is, Sarah. That it is. I hung up, locked the front door, and walked down the driveway to my car. My Toyota. It was parked right where the oil stain used to be. I didn't care. The ledger was balanced. Update, 6 months later. I figured I should add a small update since things have been interesting. After we moved in, we found things. Hidden things. In the attic, tucked behind insulation, we found a box of financial documents Richard had hidden. It turns out, he hadn't just made bad investments. He had been gambling. There were markers from casinos in Atlantic City and Vegas totaling 6 figures. It explained why the Zurich liquidity never appeared. But the real kicker was a letter we found in Victoria's old vanity, which they had left behind because it was too heavy to move. It was a letter to her sister, dated 3 years ago. In it, she wrote, "We have the perfect setup. That stupid management company never checks on us. We're going to stay here forever. Mark is useless, but at least he's too afraid to challenge us. And his wife? She's so desperate for our approval she'll probably pay for our nursing home eventually. We just have to keep the pressure on." Reading that cured Mark of any lingering guilt. "They thought we were stupid," he said, holding the letter. "They thought they were superior," I said. "Arrogance makes you blind." We burned the letter in the fireplace. We are currently renting the basement suite, which we fully renovated, to a traveling nurse. She pays her rent on time. She's quiet. She loves Lily. It's nice to have a good tenant. As for Richard and Victoria, word on the street is they got evicted from their apartment for noise complaints and trying to pay rent with a post-dated check that bounced. They are currently staying with Victoria's sister, the one she wrote the letter to. I wonder if she showed her the letter. I'm guessing not. But if she ever calls me asking for a reference, I have a binder ready. End of log. To fool by letting my girlfriend's family roast me for being poor right before my business partner destroyed them. Throwaway account because my main is known in my industry. This is going to be long. I need to get this all down while the adrenaline is still pumping. I looked at the velvet ring box sitting in my glove box and threw it into the center console before walking into the restaurant. That was how my night ended. It started with me thinking I was about to propose to the love of my life. Now I am sitting in a hotel room down the street from the apartment I pay for, drinking the minibar whiskey, and watching my phone light up with calls from people who wouldn't look me in the eye 3 hours ago. Let me give you the background so you understand the absolute insanity of what just happened. I have been with Sarah for 2 years. We met at a coffee shop where I was working on my laptop. I was wearing a hoodie and sweatpants. She spilled a latte on my table. We laughed. We started talking. I asked her out. It was simple. It was pure. Here is the thing about me. I grew up with nothing. I mean boiling water to make the house feel warm kind of nothing. When I got into tech, I made a promise to myself that I would never be vulnerable again. I worked 18-hour days for 6 years straight. I built a back-end logistics infrastructure system that most of you have probably used without knowing it. 3 years ago, I brought in a partner, Marcus, to handle the face-to-face side of the business because I hate people and I hate suits. Marcus loves the spotlight. I love the code. It worked. We sold a majority stake in the software last year. I am not just comfortable. I am retired at 29 if I want to be. But I do not live like it. I drive a 2016 Honda Accord. I wear comfortable jeans and plain t-shirts. I rent a nice but modest apartment. I do not talk about money. Ever. Sarah knew I worked in computers. She knew I could pay my half of the bills. She knew I had savings. But she never dug deep, and I never volunteered the numbers. I wanted someone to love me, not the bank account. Over the last 6 months, Sarah started changing. She got a promotion at her marketing firm and started hanging out with a new crowd. She started making comments about my car. She started sending me links to investment watches. She started using words like elevation and aesthetic in normal conversation. I brushed it off. I thought she was just excited about her career. Then came the invitation to her father's birthday dinner. Her father, Richard, is a piece of work. He is a mid-level executive at a commercial real estate firm. He leases a BMW he cannot afford. He talks loudly at waiters. He is the type of guy who asks what you do for a living before he asks your name. Her mother, Linda, is a shadow who only speaks to correct people's grammar or point out that someone gained weight. Sarah was stressed about this dinner for weeks. "Please just wear a suit, Jack," she told me on Tuesday. "A real suit. Not the one you wore to the funeral." "I have one suit," I said. "It is fine. It is clean." "Can you buy a new one?" she asked. "My dad is inviting some of his senior partners. It is a big deal for him. He wants to show off the family. I am not family yet, I joked. She didn't laugh. Just please. For me. Do not embarrass me. That stung. I went out and bought a new shirt and a tie that cost more than my weekly grocery budget used to be. I polished my shoes. I shaved. I thought I looked good. We arrived at the restaurant at 7 p.m. sharp. It was one of those steakhouses where the menu does not have prices and the lighting is so dim you need a flashlight to see your fork. Richard was already at the head of the table, holding court with a glass of scotch. Linda was next to him, looking miserable. There were two other couples there. One was Sarah's sister and her husband, a miserable-looking tax attorney. The other couple was strangers. Sarah gripped my arm as we walked up. Remember, she hissed. You are a consultant. Do not say you fix computers. I do not fix computers, I whispered back. I build infrastructure. Just say consultant, she snapped. We sat down. Richard looked at me over the rim of his glass. He didn't smile. Jack, he said. You made it. And you are wearing a tie. Miracle of the year. The table laughed. Sarah laughed the loudest. I felt a knot form in my stomach. Happy birthday, Richard, I said. I handed him the bottle of scotch I had brought. It was a $200 bottle. Not insane, but respectful. He looked at the label and sneered. Macallan 12. Quaint. Thanks, Jack. We can use this for mixers. He set it aside without opening it and poured himself more of whatever he was drinking. I took a breath. I looked at Sarah. She was avoiding my eyes, busy charming the older couple across from us. So Jack, the older man asked. He was introduced as Mr. Henderson, one of Richard's bosses. Richard tells us you are in tech support? I choked on my water. Consulting, Sarah interrupted quickly. He does independent consulting for tech firms. Helping them organize. Organize, Richard boomed. He fixes servers, Bob. If your printer breaks, Jack is your guy. I actually design automated logistics protocols, I said, trying to keep my voice level. It is a bit more complex than printers. Logistics, Richard waved his hand dismissively. Delivery drivers. Same thing. It is honest work, I suppose. Not everyone can be a heavy hitter. He winked at Mr. Henderson. We were just talking about the Ether deal, Jack. Big league stuff. Probably over your head. We are closing a contract with Ether Systems next week. Multi-million-dollar portfolio management. I am leading the point on it. My blood ran cold. Ether Systems. That is my company. Well, technically it is the parent company Marcus and I formed after the buyout to manage the subsidiaries. We were indeed looking for a new real estate management firm for our new headquarters and 3 satellite offices. Marcus was handling the search. I had barely looked at the short list of vendors. I stared at Richard. Ether Systems? I asked. You are working with them? I am closing them, Richard corrected, puffing his chest out. I have a meeting with their CEO, Marcus Thorne, on Tuesday. Great guy. Sharp. A real visionary. Unlike the code monkeys he probably hires to keep the lights on. He looked directly at me when he said, code monkeys. Sarah kicked me under the table. I looked at her. She was pleading with her eyes. Just take it, her eyes said. Don't ruin this. I decided to test the waters. I heard Marcus Thorne is a tough negotiator, I said. I heard he relies heavily on his silent partner for final approval on vendors. Richard laughed. A harsh, barking sound. Silent partner? Please. Thorne runs that show. The silent partner is probably some trust fund kid who put up the seed money and sits on a beach. I deal with the men in charge. Not the shadows. Actually, I said, I think the partner is quite involved. And what would you know about it? Linda spoke up for the first time. Her voice was like ice. Jack, please do not pretend you understand corporate structures. Stick to your consulting. Mom, Sarah said. Jack is just making conversation. He is embarrassing himself, Richard said loudly. The whole table went quiet. Look, Jack. I know you are trying to impress us. Sarah tells us you are saving up to upgrade that piece of junk car of yours. That is cute. But do not sit here and lecture me on business. I am closing deals that are worth more than you will make in your entire life. I looked at Sarah. I waited for her to defend me. I waited for her to say, actually, Jack is brilliant. Jack works hard. Jack treats me like gold. She took a sip of her wine. Dad, stop, she said weakly. Jack, just drop it. You don't know what you are talking about. There it was. The betrayal. It wasn't the dad's insults. I expected those. It was her agreement. She was ashamed of me. She thought I was a loser who didn't understand the real world. I picked up my menu. I think I will have the steak, I said calmly. Market price is $80, Richard said. I am paying, but let's not be greedy, Jack. The chicken is nice. My jaw tightened so hard I thought a tooth would crack. I can pay for my own steak, Richard. With what? Richard smirked. Coupons. The table erupted in laughter again. Sarah giggled. That giggle ended our relationship right there. I just didn't know how to leave yet. The appetizers arrived. I ate a crab cake in silence. Richard continued to brag about the ether deal. He was getting details wrong. He mentioned the wrong square footage requirements. He mentioned a timeline that was impossible. He was lying to his boss, Mr. Henderson, to look good. Then, I saw him. Marcus walked into the restaurant. He was wearing a bespoke suit that cost more than Richard's car. He looked like a movie star. The hostess was practically bowing as she led him toward a private booth in the back. He was on his phone, looking annoyed. Richard saw him too. His face lit up. Speak of the devil! Richard exclaimed. He stood up, wiping his mouth with a napkin. That is him. That is Marcus Thorne. Watch this, everyone. I am going to go say hello. Seal the deal. Richard, sit down, Linda said. He is eating. Nonsense. We are practically partners, Richard said. He adjusted his tie and strutted toward the walkway. I watched. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion. Richard stepped in front of Marcus. Marcus stopped. He looked confused. Richard extended a hand. Marcus didn't take it immediately. They exchanged words. I couldn't hear them, but I saw Marcus's body language. He was polite but dismissive. He tried to step around Richard. Richard blocked him, laughing too loudly, pointing back at our table. Marcus looked over at our table. His eyes scanned the group. He saw Mr. Henderson. He saw Sarah. Then he saw me. He froze. A slow, wide grin spread across Marcus's face. He said something to Richard, patted Richard on the shoulder aggressively, and started walking toward us. Richard trotted behind him like a confused puppy. Oh my God, Sarah whispered. He is coming here. Jack, stand up. Show respect. I stayed seated. I leaned back in my chair and crossed my arms. Marcus stopped at the head of the table. Richard was beaming, breathless. Everyone, Richard announced. I want to introduce you to Marcus Thorne, CEO of Ether Systems. Marcus, this is my family. Marcus ignored him. He looked directly at me. Jack. Marcus said. What are you doing here? You missed the quarterly review meeting this morning. I thought you were sick. The table went deadly silent. Sarah dropped her fork. It clattered against the china loudly. I took a personal day, I said. It is Richard's birthday. Richard is Sarah's father. Marcus looked at Richard, then back at me. The realization hit him. Wait. This is the Richard? The real estate Richard you told me about? The one who thinks cloud computing has to do with weather patterns. I smirked. That is the one. Richard's face went from red to white. You know each other? Marcus laughed. He walked over and slapped me on the back. Know him? Richard, this is Jack. My partner. The founder of Ether Systems. The guy who wrote the code that you are trying to sell a building to house. Mr. Henderson gasped. The founder. Majority shareholder, Marcus corrected. I just work for him, essentially. Jack is the brains. I am just the pretty face. Marcus looked at my empty plate. Why are you eating here, Jack? The service is terrible. Come join me in the back. I have a bottle of the 52 coming. I looked at Sarah. Her mouth was open. She looked like she was hallucinating. She looked at her father, then at me. The calculation in her eyes was instant. The shame vanished, replaced by panic and a sudden desperate greed. Jack, she whispered. Is that true? I stood up. I took my napkin and placed it gently on the table. It is true, I said. But apparently, I am just a consultant who fixes printers. And I can't afford the steak. I looked at Richard. He was trembling. Jack, I didn't know. You never said. You never asked, I said. You saw a Honda and a cheap watch and you decided who I was. And you, I looked at Mr. Henderson. You should probably know that Richard here has been misrepresenting the specs on the Ether project. We need Class A security clearance for the server rooms. Richard told you he needed standard office space because he wanted to push a property he has a commission on. We aren't signing with you. Jack. Richard squeaked. Let's not be hasty. We can discuss this. We just did, I said. I turned to Sarah. She reached for my hand. Jack, wait. Please. I didn't mean it. I just wanted them to like you. You wanted them to like a version of me that doesn't exist, I said. You sat there and laughed while he humiliated me. You were ashamed of me, Sarah. You can't love someone you are ashamed of. I pulled my hand away. Happy birthday, Richard. Enjoy the chicken. I walked away with Marcus. We didn't go to his booth. We walked straight out of the restaurant. That was brutal, Marcus said as we stood on the curb waiting for the valet. Do you want to talk about it? No, I said. I want to go to a dive bar and drink cheap beer. Done, Marcus said. My phone started buzzing before I even got into my car. Update 1, 3 hours later. I am in the hotel. I blocked Richard's number after he left me a voicemail begging me to reconsider the contract for the sake of the family. The audacity is actually impressive. Sarah has sent 40 texts. They range from I love you to how could you do this to my dad, to please let me explain. Here is the one that got me. Jack, you lied to me. You led me to believe you were struggling. That is financial infidelity. You trapped me. I trapped her? By living within my means? By not flashing wealth? I replied once, I never lied. I told you I worked in infrastructure. I told you I had savings. You assumed the rest. Tonight showed me exactly who you are when you think nobody is watching. My key is under the mat. Do not be there when I come to get my things tomorrow. She is now threatening to come to the hotel. I told the front desk that if a woman named Sarah tries to come up, to call the police. I feel hollow. I loved her. I really did. I thought she was the one person who liked me for me. But she was just tolerating me until she could upgrade. And when she thought she couldn't upgrade me, she joined in on kicking me down. I am going to try to sleep. I have a feeling tomorrow is going to be a war. Update 2, the next morning. I did not sleep. I checked out of the hotel at 8 a.m. I called Marcus and told him to have legal draft a formal cease and desist for Richard if he tries to contact me professionally again. I also told him to blacklist Richard's firm. Petty? Maybe. But the man insulted me for 2 hours and then tried to leverage a relationship he just destroyed. I went to the apartment. I brought 2 movers I hired off an app because I didn't want to be alone with her. She was there. She was crying. Her mom was there too. Of course. Jack, this is ridiculous, Linda said as I walked in. She was wearing a silk robe and drinking coffee from my mug. You are overreacting. Richard was just ribbing you. It is what men do. Richard called me a loser and a liar, I said. Move, Linda. He was trying to motivate you. Sarah cried. She looked terrible. Puffy eyes, runny makeup. He wants the best for me. He thought you were dead weight. And you agreed, I said. I started packing my books. The movers were handling the furniture I bought. Which was all of it. I didn't agree. Sarah screamed. I was terrified. You know how he is. I have to live with them. You don't understand the pressure. I understand loyalty, I said. And I understand that you watched me get treated like a dog and you handed them the leash. But you are rich, she yelled. Why does it matter? You won. You have millions. Why do you care what my dad thinks? I stopped packing. I looked at her. Because for 2 years, you made me feel like I was enough. But last night, I realized you were just waiting for me to be more. And the money? The money doesn't fix the fact that you have no backbone. I am entitled to half, she said suddenly. Her voice went flat. I laughed. I actually laughed. We aren't married, Sarah. You are entitled to the IKEA lamp you bought in 2022. Take it. Common law marriage, Linda chimed in. We looked it up. We live in a state that doesn't recognize common law marriage, I said. And even if we didn't, we have only lived together for 10 months. Nice try. I finished packing my personal items in 20 minutes. The movers took the couch, the TV, the bed, and the dining table. The apartment looked exactly as empty as I felt. Jack, please, Sarah tried one last time. She grabbed my arm. I love you. We can fix this. My dad is sorry. He wants to have you over for dinner. Just us. No business talk. Please. I looked at her hand on my arm. I remembered how that hand felt holding mine in the movies. I remembered how that hand felt rubbing my back when I was stressed. No, I said. I don't think so. I walked out. I left the key on the counter. Update 3, 2 days later. The fallout has been nuclear. Mr. Henderson, Richard's boss, called Marcus. Apparently, after we left, Richard had a meltdown in the restaurant. He started screaming that Marcus was a fraud and that I was a con artist. He got kicked out. Mr. Henderson fired Richard yesterday morning. It turns out, Richard had been promising the partners that the ether deal was in the bag for months. He had already spent the commission he hadn't earned on a down payment for a vacation home. When the deal vanished, and the truth about his behavior came out, the firm cut him loose to save face. Now, the family is going scorched earth on me. I have received emails from Sarah's cousins, her aunt, and her brother. They are all calling me a monster. They say I ruined a good man's career over a joke. They say I led Sarah on. They say I am a sociopath for hiding my wealth. Sarah sent me a long email. No subject line. Jack. You ruined my life. My dad lost his job. My mom is having panic attacks. I can't afford the rent on the apartment alone, so I have to move back in with them. You did this. You held the power the whole time and you used it to hurt us. If you had just told us who you were, none of this would have happened. You wanted to test us. You are sick. I hope your money keeps you warm. I read it 3 times. Did I test them? Maybe. Subconsciously. But is it a test to expect basic decency? Is it a test to expect your partner to defend you against bullies? I don't think so. I am staying at a different hotel now. I bought a house yesterday. Cash. It is a nice house. 4 bedrooms. Big yard. It is too big for one person. But I needed to put the money somewhere. I needed to prove to myself that I could exist in my own success without apologizing for it. Marcus came over tonight with pizza. We sat on the floor of the empty living room. You know, Marcus said, chewing on a slice of pepperoni. You could have told them. You could have flashed the Amex black card and shut them up. I know, I said. Why didn't you? Because, I said. If I had to buy their respect, it wouldn't have been real. Marcus nodded. Fair enough. But next time? Maybe wear the nice suit. Just to save us the drama. I laughed. It felt good to laugh. Update 4. The final update, 1 month later. I thought that was the end of it, but life has a funny way of dragging things out. I was at a coffee shop this morning, a different one, across town. I was working on a new patch for the system. I was wearing my hoodie. I saw Sarah. She was with a guy. He was wearing a suit. He was loud. He was talking on his phone while she sat there, looking at her hands. I watched them for a minute. The guy hung up and snapped his fingers at a barista. Sarah flinched. She looked up and saw me. Our eyes locked. She looked tired. She looked smaller. She looked at the guy she was with, a cheap copy of her father, and then back at me. I saw regret. I saw misery. She started to stand up. She looked like she was going to come over. I closed my laptop. I put my coffee in the trash. And I walked out the back door before she could take a step. I blocked her email address today. I blocked her family. I am done. I still drive my Honda. I still wear my jeans. But yesterday, I went to a dealership and looked at an Aston Martin. I didn't buy it. But I sat in it. It felt nice. Maybe I will buy it. Maybe I won't. But for the first time in my life, I realize that the choice is mine. And I don't need anyone's permission to make it. I am Jack. I build infrastructure. And I am finally rebuilding my own life. Edit for clarification. A lot of you are asking about the ring. I returned it. The jeweler took a 10% restocking fee. It was the best money I ever lost. TLDR, girlfriend's dad roasted me for being poor at his birthday dinner. My business partner walked in and revealed I own the multi-million-dollar company the dad was trying to court. Dad lost his job. I lost the girl. I kept my dignity. Comment section highlights. Recreated. User 1. The financial infidelity text is classic projection. She was mad she couldn't spend your money, not that you didn't tell her about it. Bullet dodged, OP. User 2. Richard losing his job is the cherry on top. FAFO, fuck around find out, at its finest. You don't insult people you're trying to do business with, regardless of who they are. User 3. I'm stuck on the mom saying, it's just what men do. No Linda, it's what assholes do. Good on you for walking away. User 4. By the Aston Martin Jack. Treat yourself. Update 5. 6 months later, the real end. I wasn't going to post again, but something happened today that closed the book permanently. I was at a charity gala. Marcus dragged me there. It was a black tie event for underprivileged youth in tech, something I care about. I donated a significant amount, so I had to be there to shake hands. I was wearing a tuxedo. A real one. I actually looked in the mirror and didn't hate it. I was standing by the bar when a waiter tapped me on the shoulder. Sir, there is a gentleman outside who insists on speaking with you. Security won't let him in. I had a feeling. I walked to the lobby. Through the glass doors, I saw Richard. He looked rough. His suit was ill-fitting, he had lost weight. His hair was messy. He was arguing with the security guard. He saw me. He stopped arguing and pressed his hand against the glass. He mouthed the word please. I stood there on the other side of the glass. The man who had sneered at my $200 bottle of scotch. The man who had called me a monkey. I could have gone out there. I could have yelled at him. I could have laughed at him. I could have given him money. But I realized I felt nothing. No anger. No satisfaction. Just indifference. I turned my back on him and walked back into the party. Marcus handed me a glass of champagne. Who was it? Nobody, I said. Just a ghost. I met a woman that night. Her name is Elena. She is a pediatric nurse. She drives a beat-up Toyota. When I told her I work in software, she asked if I get eye strain. She didn't ask what kind of car I drive. She didn't ask about my stock options. We are going for coffee tomorrow. I'm going to wear my hoodie. And if she spills a latte on me, I think I'm going to be just fine. End of story. The notification that ended my relationship with my family didn't come with a bang or a scream. It came with a dull vibration of my phone against the mahogany surface of my desk at work. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was staring at a spreadsheet, minding my own business, trying to ignore the low hum of the office HVAC system. The screen lit up. It was a credit alert from Experian. I usually swiped these away because I was meticulous about my finances. I had an 800 credit score. I paid my balances in full every month. I drove a 5-year-old Honda Civic that I maintained myself. I was the definition of financial stability. I unlocked my phone and tapped the app. I expected to see a notification that my balance had decreased or perhaps an inquiry from the mortgage broker I had spoken to the week prior about getting a pre-approval for a condo. The app loaded. The number at the top of the screen was not 800. It was 540. I stared at it. I closed the app. I reopened the app 540. A drop of 260 points overnight. My stomach dropped so hard I felt the acid hit the back of my throat. I clicked on the factors affecting your score tab. There were 7 new accounts opened in the last 3 weeks. 2 personal loans totaling $50,000. 3 credit cards maxed out to their limits. A luxury auto lease for a BMW M3. And a collection notice for a payday loan. I sat there frozen. My identity hadn't just been stolen. It had been hijacked, beaten, and left for dead in a ditch. I immediately called the fraud department of the bank holding the largest personal loan. I navigated through the automated menus, my heart rate climbing with every robot voice prompt. Finally, a human came on the line. I explained the situation. I told them I did not open this loan. I told them I was at work. I told them this was a mistake. The agent, a woman with a tired voice, asked me to verify some security questions. Mother's maiden name. First pet. High school mascot. I answered them all correctly. Then she said something that made the blood drain from my face. She said the loan proceeds were deposited into a checking account under my name at their branch. She said the verification was done in person. She said the applicant provided a driver's license and a social security card. I asked her which branch. She gave me the address. It was the branch 3 blocks from my parents' house in the suburbs. I hung up and logged into my main banking portal. I saw the transfer history. The money hadn't stayed in the fraudulent account. It had been wired out almost immediately. I looked at the destination account numbers. I didn't recognize them. But then I saw a Zelle transfer for a small amount, a test transaction, sent to a contact name, Liam. Liam. My brother. The golden child. The prodigy. The one who had just gotten engaged to a beautiful woman from a wealthy family. The one who had just landed a vice president title at a boutique marketing firm. The one who drove a BMW M3. My hands were shaking, not with fear, but with a cold, terrifying clarity. I didn't call him. I didn't call my parents. I left work early, citing a family emergency. It was the truth. The emergency was that my family was about to be destroyed. I drove to the police station first. I needed a paper trail. The officer at the desk looked bored until I showed him the credit report and the transfer log. I filed a report for identity theft. I explicitly named Liam as the suspect. The officer asked if I was sure I wanted to do that, reminding me that this was a felony. I looked him in the eye and said I wanted to press charges to the fullest extent of the law. He gave me a case number. Next, I went to my parents' house. I knew Liam would be there. Tuesday was family dinner night. I usually skipped it because I couldn't stand the way my mother fawned over Liam's fictional successes while ignoring my actual ones. I parked my Honda behind Liam's brand new, gleaming black BMW M3. The license plate frame was still the dealer placeholder. I walked inside. The smell of pot roast filled the hallway. My mother was laughing in the kitchen. My father was pouring wine. Liam was sitting at the head of the table, looking like the king of the world in a tailored suit that I now knew I had paid for. They stopped when I walked in. I didn't say hello. I threw the police report and the printout of my credit score onto the table. It landed right in the middle of the salad bowl. Liam looked at the papers, then at me. His expression didn't change to fear. It changed to annoyance. He picked up a piece of lettuce that had landed on his sleeve and flicked it away. My father picked up the report. He put on his reading glasses. The silence stretched for 10 seconds, then 20. My mother came over and looked over his shoulder. I watched her face. I waited for the shock. I waited for the outrage. Instead, she sighed. She looked at me with a look of disappointment. Not at Liam. At me. She asked why I went to the police before coming to them. I felt like I had been slapped. I asked her if she understood what she was reading. I told her that Liam had stolen my identity. I told her he had ruined my financial life. I told her I was facing 6 figures of debt that wasn't mine. Liam took a sip of wine. He said he didn't steal anything. He said he borrowed it. He said he was in a tight spot with liquidity because his assets were tied up in the market and he needed bridge capital for the house he was buying with his fiancée, Sarah. He said he intended to pay it back before I even noticed. I asked him how he forged my signature. I asked him how he got my social security card. He shrugged. He said he knew where I kept my documents. He said we were brothers and that should mean something. I looked at my father. He was a man who prided himself on integrity. He was a retired high school principal. Surely, he would see the insanity of this. My father took off his glasses. He rubbed the bridge of his nose. He told me that involving the authorities was a mistake. He said this was a family matter. He said that Liam had a bright future and a reputation to uphold. He said that an arrest record would ruin his career and his engagement. He asked me to drop the charges. I stood there, realizing that I was the stranger in this room. I was the inconvenience. Liam was the protagonist of their lives, and I was just the supporting character who was supposed to absorb the damage to keep the plot moving. I told them no. I told them I wasn't going to pay for Liam's lifestyle. I told them I wasn't going to let him destroy my credit for a car he couldn't afford and a life he didn't earn. My mother started crying. Not for me. She cried because I was being selfish. She said I was jealous of Liam. She said I was trying to sabotage his happiness because I was single and miserable. She offered a compromise. She said Liam would sign a promissory note to pay me back. She said they would help him make the payments. All I had to do was tell the police it was a misunderstanding. Liam smirked. That small, imperceptible lift of the corner of his mouth. He knew he had one. He knew they would protect him. He thought he was untouchable. That smirk changed everything. If he had cried, if he had begged, if he had shown an ounce of remorse, I might have considered it. I might have been the fool they wanted me to be. But that smirk told me that he had done this before. Maybe not to this scale, but he had crossed lines and been bailed out. He viewed me as a resource, not a human being. I made a decision in that second. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to fight them tonight. I was going to destroy him. And I was going to do it so thoroughly that there would be no recovery. I took a deep breath. I forced my posture to relax. I lowered my voice. I told them they were right. I told them I didn't want to ruin the family. I told them I was shocked and angry, but I would go to the police station in the morning and retract the statement. I said we needed to draw up a payment plan immediately. The tension in the room evaporated. My mother hugged me. My father poured me a glass of wine. Liam clapped me on the shoulder and said he knew I'd come around. He said he'd have the money back to me in 6 months, tops. I sat down and ate the pot roast. I listened to Liam talk about his wedding plans. I listened to him brag about the venue, the band, the honeymoon in the Maldives. I nodded. I smiled. I calculated. The next morning, I did not go to the police station to retract my statement. I went to a lawyer. I hired a specialist in forensic accounting and identity fraud. I gave him the case number. I gave him everything. I told him I wanted to build a case so watertight that even God couldn't find a loophole. The lawyer, a sharp man named Mr. Henderson, told me that since I had initially engaged with a family and verbally agreed to a loan repayment, the defense could argue that this was a civil dispute, not criminal theft. He said Liam could claim I gave him permission and simply changed my mind. To nail him, we needed more. We needed him to admit, in writing or on a recording, that he took the money without permission and that he forged the documents. We needed proof of the mechanism of the fraud. I went back to my life. I played the part of the supportive brother. This was the hardest part. I had to watch Liam drive that car. I had to watch him buy expensive gifts for Sarah. I had to make minimum payments on the fraudulent loans to keep them from going to default and destroying my score further, knowing that every dollar I spent was buying Liam time. I started digging. I went to my parents' house when I knew they were out. I still had a key. I went into Liam's old room, which he used as a home office when he visited. I found a notebook. Liam was arrogant, but he wasn't organized. He had written down passwords. I didn't use them to log in. That would be illegal access. I handed the notebook to the private investigator Mr. Henderson recommended. The PI did the rest legally. He found that Liam had been gambling. Heavily. The investments he talked about were high-risk options trading and online poker. He was hemorrhaging money. The loans he took out in my name weren't for bridge capital. They were to cover a hole that was getting deeper every day. I needed the confession. I drafted a document. It looked like a standard family loan agreement. But buried in the recitals, In the dense legalese that Liam never read because he thought he was smarter than everyone else, was a clause that explicitly stated, borrower acknowledges that the initial funds were obtained through the unauthorized use of lender's personal identification and without lender's prior consent or knowledge. I brought it to him a week later. I told him my accountant needed it for tax purposes if I was going to carry this debt for him. I told him it was just a formality to keep the IRS off my back. Liam glanced at it. He laughed at the thickness of the document. He asked if I wrote it myself. I said yes. He signed it without reading the second page. He initialed the bottom. I took the document. I scanned it. I sent the original to Mr. Henderson. But I didn't stop there. I needed to isolate him. I needed Sarah to know, but not yet. If she found out too early, she might warn him. She might help him cover it up to save face. I needed her to find out when it was too late to save him. The wedding was 6 months away. The court date for the fraud case, which the district attorney had picked up thanks to Mr. Henderson's relentless pushing and the evidence we provided, was scheduled for 3 weeks before the wedding. I lived in a state of suspended animation. My credit score hovered in the 500s. I couldn't get a mortgage. I couldn't get a new credit card. I lived on cash. I ate cheap food. I watched my brother live like a king on my dime. My parents praised me for being so understanding. They told me I was being the bigger man. They had no idea I was the executioner. 3 months into the wait, Liam missed a payment to me. The agreement we had signed, the fake one I let him believe was the only one, said he had to pay me $2,000 a month. He texted me saying he was short. He said the wedding deposits were heavy. He asked for an extension. I texted back, no problem. Just get it to me when you can. I screenshotted the text. It was more evidence. He was admitting the debt. Then came the engagement party. It was at a country club. My parents paid for it, but Liam took the credit. He stood up to give a toast. He thanked our parents. He thanked Sarah. He didn't mention me. He looked glowing. He looked successful. Sarah came up to me at the bar. She was a sweet girl, too good for him. She asked me why I looked so tired lately. She asked if everything was okay. I looked at her. I looked at the diamond ring on her finger. I knew exactly which credit card had paid for it. It was the Chase Sapphire Reserve under my name. I wanted to tell her. I wanted to scream, run. But I couldn't. I needed the stage to be set. I told her I was just working hard. I told her I was happy for them. She squeezed my hand. She said Liam looked up to me. She said he always talked about how I was his rock. I almost threw up. The weeks ticked by. The DA was building the case. They had the bank surveillance footage of Liam impersonating me. They had the notary who Liam had bribed to stamp the documents. I found him too. A guy named Sketchy Pete who worked out of a Majestic mail strip mall. We pressured Pete. He flipped on Liam instantly to save his own license. The summons was served on a Friday. I wasn't there, but I heard about it. 2 officers walked into Liam's office at the marketing firm. They did it publicly. They asked for him by name. They handed him the indictment. Grand larceny. Identity theft in the 1st degree. Forgery. Liam called me 10 minutes later. He was hysterical. "What did you do?" he screamed. "You said you dropped it. You said we had a deal." I answered calmly. "I lied. Just like you lied when you stole 50 grand from me." He hung up. Then my mother called. She was screaming. She called me a traitor. She said I had ruined the family. She said I was dead to her. I blocked her number. I blocked my father's number. I sat in my apartment and waited. The fallout was immediate. Liam was fired on Monday. His firm had a zero-tolerance policy for financial crimes. It turns out, when you handle client budgets, being indicted for fraud is a liability. The parents tried to intervene legally. They hired a high-priced defense attorney for Liam. The attorney contacted Mr. Henderson. They offered a settlement. They offered to pay back the full amount plus 10% interest if I dropped the charges. I told Mr. Henderson to tell them that I wasn't interested in the money. I was interested in justice. The attorney threatened to drag my name through the mud. He said they would paint me as a jealous, vindictive brother who entrapped Liam. Mr. Henderson sent them the document Liam had signed. The one where he admitted to the fraud. The plea deal offer came 2 days later. Probation. Restitution. No jail time. I rejected it. The DA, seeing the strength of the evidence and my refusal to cooperate with a plea, decided to push for trial. They wanted a conviction. The court date arrived. I walked into the courtroom. My parents were there. They glared at me with hatred that was palpable. Liam looked small. He wasn't wearing his tailored suit. He was wearing a generic gray suit that fit poorly. He looked tired. Sarah was there. She sat behind my parents. She looked confused. She looked scared. She still didn't know the full extent. She probably thought it was a misunderstanding, just like Liam told her. The trial was short. It wasn't a dramatic TV trial. It was boring, methodical, and brutal. The prosecution laid out the timeline. They showed the credit reports. They showed the bank transfers. They played the audio recording of the call Liam made to the bank pretending to be me. I hadn't known about that until the discovery phase. Hearing his voice mimicking mine, giving my social security number, made my skin crawl. Then came the testimony. I took the stand. The defense attorney tried to rattle me. He asked if I was jealous of my brother. He asked if I had given him permission because I wanted to help him buy a house. I looked at the jury. I spoke clearly. I did not give him permission to steal my identity. I did not give him permission to ruin my financial future. I loved my brother. I trusted him. He used that trust to commit a crime. Then Mr. Henderson, acting as an advisor to the prosecution, signaled to introduce Exhibit G. The document. The defense attorney objected. The judge overruled it. The prosecutor read the clause aloud. Borrower acknowledges that the initial funds were obtained through the unauthorized use of lender's personal identification. I watched Sarah's face. She went pale. She looked at the back of Liam's head. Then she looked at the ring on her finger. She took it off. She looked at it like it was a poisonous insect. She placed it on the bench beside her. She stood up. My mother tried to grab her arm. Sarah pulled away. She walked out of the courtroom. The sound of the heavy wooden doors closing behind her was the loudest sound in the world. Liam turned around. He saw the empty seat. He saw the ring sitting there. He broke. He put his head in his hands and started to sob. Not a silent cry. A loud, ugly, heaving sob. The jury wasn't sympathetic. They saw a privileged man who had stolen from his own blood to fund a lifestyle he couldn't afford. The verdict was guilty on all counts. The sentencing hearing was a week later. The judge was harsh. He cited the breach of familial trust. He cited the lack of remorse until the consequences arrived. Liam was sentenced to 3 years in state prison. He was ordered to pay full restitution. My parents liquidated their retirement savings to pay me back. They did it not to help me, but to try to reduce Liam's sentence. It didn't work. The money hit my account. I used it to pay off the loans immediately. I sent letters to the credit bureaus with the court judgment attached. My score began to heal. It took months, but the fraud alerts were removed. The accounts were closed. I never spoke to my parents again. They sent me a letter once. It didn't apologize. It blamed me for destroying the family. It said I should have just taken the money and kept my mouth shut. It said I was cold. I burned the letter. I heard through mutual friends that Sarah sold the house. She moved to a different city. She changed her number. Liam served 2 years. He got out early for good behavior. He works at a landscaping company now. He can't get a job in finance. He can't get a loan. He lives in my parents' basement. Sometimes, I think about that Tuesday afternoon. I think about the moment I saw the 540 credit score. I think about the choice I had. To scream, to fight, to be the victim. Or to be silent, to wait, and to be the architect of my own justice. I chose silence. And silence, when aimed correctly, is louder than any scream. My credit score is back to 810 now. I bought the condo. I have a new circle of friends who don't know my family. I am happy. But I still check my credit report every single morning. And every time I see that perfect number, I remember the price Liam paid for his perfection. And I remember that I was the one who collected the bill. The most difficult part wasn't the legal battle. It wasn't the money. It was realizing that the people who were supposed to protect me were the ones holding the knife. My parents didn't grieve the loss of their honest son. They grieved the exposure of their favorite one. That realization is a scar that no amount of restitution can heal. I learned that blood is not thicker than water. Blood is just a biological fluid. Trust is the bond. And when that bond is severed, you have to cauterize the wound, no matter how much it hurts. I am not sorry for what I did. I am not sorry that Liam is a felon. I am not sorry that my parents are alone. They made their choice when they asked me to pay for the crime committed against me. I simply made my choice to decline the offer. If you are reading this, and you are in a situation where family is using you, where they are stepping on you to keep themselves clean, stop. Don't scream. Don't beg. Don't try to reason with insanity. Go silent. Gather your evidence. Build your fortress. And when the time is right, open the gates and let the truth trample them. Because the only thing worse than being a victim is being a volunteer. I kept the BMW keychain. I found it in a box of junk Liam left behind at the apartment we once shared years ago, long before the fraud. It wasn't the key to the M3. It was a cheap plastic fob from an old car he had in college. I keep it on my desk. It reminds me that everything Liam had was fake. The success, the money, the car, the reputation. It was all plastic painted to look like gold. I am real. My life is real. My debts are paid. And that is worth more than any perfect life built on a lie. The last time I saw Liam was accidental. I was at a gas station 3 towns over. He was filling up a rusted truck with the landscaping company logo on the side. He looked 10 years older. His hair was thinning. He had a cigarette hanging out of his mouth. He saw me. He froze. I finished pumping my gas. I didn't glare. I didn't smile. I didn't acknowledge him. I got into my car, a new Audi that I bought with my own money, with my own credit, with my own hard work, and I drove away. I saw him in the rearview mirror, watching me go. He looked like a ghost. And in a way he was. He was the ghost of the brother I thought I had. I turned the corner and he was gone. The road ahead was clear. The sky was blue. And for the first time in years, I felt completely, utterly free. The silence was no longer a weapon. It was peace. The investigation process was something I never wanted to become an expert in, but necessity is a brutal teacher. After the initial discovery and the lawyer's advice, I became obsessed with the mechanics of Liam's deception. I needed to understand not just that he did it, but how. It was a way to regain control. If I could map the fraud, I could dismantle it. I spent nights scouring the dark web, not for illegal purposes, but to understand the marketplace of identity. I learned about fools, the packages of personal data sold to fraudsters. But Liam didn't buy my data. He stole it from my bedroom drawer. That betrayal hit harder than any stranger's hack. I remembered a summer barbecue 2 years prior. I had left my wallet on the kitchen counter at my parents' house while I was manning the grill. Liam had gone inside to get a beer. He must have been in there for 10 minutes. I remembered thinking he was taking a bathroom break. In reality, he was likely snapping photos of my license and credit cards. I replayed every interaction we had over the last 2 years. Every time he asked about my job, my salary, my banking preferences. I thought he was showing an interest in my life. He was conducting reconnaissance. I recalled a conversation about 2-factor authentication. He had asked me casually if I used SMS or an authenticator app. I told him SMS. A week later, my phone had lost service for an hour. I called the carrier, and they said it was a glitch. Now I suspected it was a SIM swap attempt that he aborted or failed to complete. The depth of the malice was bottomless. It wasn't a crime of opportunity. It was a campaign. During the silent phase, when I was pretending to go along with the repayment plan, I had to suppress a rage that felt physical. I would sit at my desk at work, my hands clenched so tight my knuckles turned white, visualizing the moment the handcuffs clicked. I channeled that rage into organization. I created a timeline in a spreadsheet. Date 1, inquiry on credit report. Date 2, loan disbursement. Date 3, transfer to Liam's account. Date 4, Liam posts a photo on Instagram of a new watch. I matched every single fraudulent transaction to a real-world event in Liam's life. The $10,000 withdrawal from the line of credit? That was the week he took Sarah to Napa. The $5,000 cash advance? That matched the buy-in for a high-stakes poker tournament at the casino he frequented. The $1,200 charge at the electronics store? A new 85-inch TV for his living room. I printed these photos. I created a visual exhibit. The proceeds of crime. When I handed this binder to the detective handling the case, his eyebrows shot up. He said he had never seen a victim do this much legwork. He said usually they have to subpoena these records and it takes months. I handed it to him on a silver platter. I want him buried, I said. The detective nodded. This is a shovel, he said, tapping the binder. The day of the arrest, I didn't just wait by the phone. I drove to the parking lot across the street from his office. I wanted to see it. I needed to verify the reality of it. I saw the police cruiser pull up. I saw the officers walk in. I saw the receptionist look up, startled. 20 minutes later, they walked him out. He wasn't in handcuffs yet, white-collar courtesy, I suppose, but he looked pale. He was arguing with them. He was gesturing wildly. Then, one of the officers stopped walking. He turned to Liam. He said something. Liam stopped moving. The officer turned him around and cuffed him. I felt a surge of adrenaline that was almost painful. He was put in the back of the car. He looked out the window. For a second, I thought he saw me. But he was looking through me, looking at the life he was leaving behind. I started my car and drove to a diner. I ordered a coffee and a slice of pie. It was the best pie I had ever tasted. The legal process that followed was a slow grind. The arraignment was perfunctory. He pleaded not guilty, of course. My parents posted his bail. They put their house up as collateral. I wondered if they knew that if he ran, they would lose everything. I wondered if they cared. The pre-trial motions were where the battle was fought. His lawyer tried to suppress the recording. He argued that it was obtained illegally. Mr. Henderson countered that since it was a call to a bank, there was no expectation of privacy, and the bank records were admissible business records. The judge agreed. His lawyer tried to suppress the loan agreement with the admission clause. He argued I had tricked him. The judge asked if Liam was a literate adult. The lawyer said yes. The judge asked if he had signed it. The lawyer said yes. The judge ruled it admissible. Every motion they filed, we swatted down. It was like watching a fly struggle in a web. My isolation deepened. My extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins, started reaching out. They had heard Liam's side. They sent me messages saying I was being cruel. They said Jesus forgives. They said family is everything. I replied to each of them with a PDF attachment of the indictment and the police report. I didn't write a message. Just the documents. They stopped texting. I realized that Liam had spun a narrative where he was the victim of a misunderstanding and I was the aggressor. He was a master manipulator. He had been practicing on our parents his whole life. But facts are stubborn things. Documents don't lie. Timestamps don't lie. The trial itself felt like a surgery. We were cutting out a tumor. The prosecutor was a woman named Ms. Sterling. She was terrifyingly competent. She didn't yell. She didn't wave her arms. She just asked questions that had no good answers. When Liam took the stand, against his lawyer's advice, I suspect, it was a disaster. He thought he could charm the jury. He thought he could talk his way out of it like he talked his way out of missed deadlines and broken promises. Ms. Sterling let him talk. She let him explain how he intended to pay it back. She let him explain how he thought I wouldn't mind. Then she struck. "Mr. Thorne," she asked, "if you thought your brother wouldn't mind, why did you practice his signature on this notepad found in your desk?" She held up the notepad the PI had found. The one with pages of attempts to replicate my autograph. Liam froze. I was just doodling. Doodling your brother's signature? Hundreds of times? Right before the loan application was signed. It's a coincidence. And the fake driver's license found in your glove box? The one with your photo but your brother's name? Was that a coincidence? We hadn't told the defense about the license. The police had found it during the search of his car after the arrest. It was the nail in the coffin. Liam stammered. He looked at his lawyer. The lawyer was looking down at his desk, rubbing his temples. I needed it for a prank. A prank, Ms. Sterling repeated. You used a prank license to secure a $50,000 loan? No. No further questions. He was done. When the verdict came down, I didn't smile. I didn't cheer. I just felt a heavy weight lift off my chest. It was the weight of obligation. The obligation to protect him, to enable him, to be the safety net. I cut the net. And he fell. The aftermath was quiet. The silence I had cultivated became my new normal. I didn't have to hide my mail anymore. I didn't have to lock my door when I visited family because I didn't visit family. I focused on my career. I got promoted. I traveled. I met someone. Her name is Elena. She's a doctor. She's kind, and she's honest. I told her about my family on our third date. I didn't want to hide it. I told her I had a brother who stole from me and parents who chose him over me. She listened. She didn't try to fix it. She didn't say, "But they're your parents." She just took my hand and said, "That sounds incredibly lonely. You don't have to be lonely anymore." She was right. I invite my friends over for Thanksgiving now. We cook a massive turkey. We drink good wine. We laugh. There is no tension. There is no golden child. There is just us. I heard that my father had a heart attack last year. I didn't go to the hospital. I sent a card. It said, "Wishing you a speedy recovery." I signed it with my name. Nothing else. Some might say that's cold. But I know what happens when I open the door even a crack. They don't want connection. They want absolution. And I am fresh out of forgiveness. Liam's landscaping job seems to be steady. I checked his court records recently. Public information is a beautiful thing. He's paying the restitution. $50 a week. At that rate, he'll pay me back in roughly 40 years. I don't care about the money. The checks go into a savings account I set up for my future children. I call it the Integrity Fund. Every time a $50 deposit hits, it's a reminder. You can steal identity. You can steal money. You can steal trust. But you cannot steal the truth. The truth always has a way of coming out, usually in a courtroom, under oath, with a court reporter typing every stuttering lie. I am free. And he is in the basement. The balance has been restored. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had accepted their deal. If I had let Liam pay me back under the table. He would have done it again. Maybe not to me, but to Sarah. Or to his employer. Or to a stranger. He would have kept escalating until the crash was fatal. In a way, I saved him. I stopped him before he could destroy someone else's life completely. I stopped him before he embezzled millions or committed a crime that carried a 20-year sentence. He hates me for it. My parents hate me for it. But I stopped the bleeding. I am the villain in their story. And I am okay with that. Because in my story, I am the hero who survived. That's the thing about Reddit stories. About these glimpses into other people's lives. You realize you aren't the only one dealing with madness. You realize that no is a complete sentence. You realize that you don't have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. I put out the fire. And I walked away from the ashes. The end. I raised my son alone while my ex traveled the world. Now she's back demanding her child after 10 years. Subreddit, r/true off my chest posted by, you/the anchor dad date. 3 days ago. I am holding a kitchen knife. Not because I am violent, but because I was cutting onions for a bolognese sauce when the doorbell rang. It was 6 p.m. on a Tuesday. My 10-year-old son Leo was at the kitchen table struggling with long division. The house smelled like garlic and rain-dampened coats. It was a normal, boring Tuesday. That is until I opened the door and saw the woman who legally abandoned us a decade ago standing on my porch with a Louis Vuitton suitcase and a tan that looked expensive. She smiled. It was that wide, vacuous smile she uses in her Instagram stories. She said, "Hi Mark. I'm home." I did not move. My brain refused to bridge the gap between the woman on my phone screen, the one jumping off cliffs in Bali and meditating in ashrams in India, and the flesh and blood person standing on my welcome mat. She tried to step inside. I blocked the doorway with my shoulder. "Vanessa," I said. It was not a question. "God, you look tired," she said, reaching out to touch my face. I recoiled. Her hand hovered in the air, adorned with silver rings I had never seen before. "Is he here? Is Leo here? My baby must be so big." She tried to push past me again. This time I planted my feet. "You are not coming in here." "Don't be dramatic, Mark. I've been flying for 20 hours. I need a shower and I need to see my son." "Your son?" I laughed. It was a dry, sharp sound. "You don't have a son. You have a faltering travel blog and a severe case of narcissism. You gave up your rights. Leave before I call the police." Leo called out from the kitchen. "Dad? Who is it?" The color drained from Vanessa's face, replaced instantly by a look of performative ecstasy. She shoved me hard, surprisingly strong for someone so waifish, and screamed past me into the hallway. "Leo! Leo, baby, mommy is home." That was 3 days ago. Since then, my life has dissolved into a hellscape of lawyers, restraining orders, and the terrified silence of a 10-year-old boy who doesn't know the stranger sleeping in the hotel down the street is supposed to be his mother. I need to get this all down. I need a record. Because she is not just back for a visit. She told me yesterday she intends to take him to Paris next month. Permanently. Context: the departure. To understand why I am currently sitting in the dark monitoring my security cameras, you have to understand how she left. 10 years ago, Vanessa and I were 24. Leo was 3 months old. I was working entry-level IT. Vanessa was struggling to connect with motherhood. That is what she called it. I called it checking out. She wouldn't hold him when he cried. She wouldn't change diapers because the smell made her gag. She spent hours on her phone looking at travel influencers, sighing loudly about how her life was over. One night, I came home from a double shift to find Leo screaming in his crib, soaked in his own filth. Vanessa was on the balcony smoking a cigarette, wearing headphones. We fought. I told her she needed to step up. I told her I couldn't do it alone. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're right. You can't do it alone. But I can't do it at all." 2 days later, I woke up to an empty bed. The closet was cleared out. There was a note on the counter next to a signed document. The note said, "I am not made for this. Don't look for me. I need to find my soul." The document was a notarized letter granting me full temporary custody and stating she waived her rights to make decisions for the child. She had evidently planned this for weeks. She had gone to a notary while I was at work. She emptied our savings account, $5,000, which was everything we had, and booked a one-way ticket to Thailand. I didn't hear from her for 3 years. The interim, the grind. I cannot emphasize enough what those first 3 years were like. I was 24, broke, and alone with an infant. I sold my car. I moved into a studio apartment that smelled like mold. I took night shifts and paid a neighbor to watch Leo, then I would come home, sleep for 2 hours, and take care of him during the day. I learned to function on 0 sleep. I learned how to soothe a teething baby while on a conference call. I learned that the court system doesn't know what to do with a mother who just vanishes. It took me 2 years to get full legal custody. The courts required diligent effort to locate her. I had to pay a private investigator money. I didn't have to prove she was untraceable, even though she was posting pictures of herself riding elephants on Facebook. Finally, a judge granted me sole physical and legal custody. The judge called it abandonment with no intent to return. Vanessa didn't contest it. She didn't even show up. We served her via publication in a newspaper in the last city she was tagged in. Leo and I built a life. Just the two of us. We are a unit. We have our routines. Tuesday is lasagna. Friday is movie night. Sunday we hike. He is a sensitive kid. He has anxiety, likely stemming from some primal abandonment wound, according to his therapist. He needs stability. He needs to know exactly what is going to happen next. He doesn't remember her. To him, mom is a concept, a blank space I tried to fill with stories about how she loved him but had to go away. I tried to be kind. I didn't want him to hate her. I wanted to protect him. I realize now that was a mistake. I should have told him the truth. I should have told him she was a selfish coward who traded him for likes on Instagram. The return, day 1 details. Back to Tuesday. After she screamed, "Mommy is home," and ran into the hallway, I tackled her. I am not proud of it, but instinct took over. I grabbed her by the back of her cashmere sweater and hauled her backward before she could reach the kitchen archway. "Get out," I snarled. "Let me see him," she shrieked. It wasn't a mother's cry. It was the tantrum of a child told they couldn't have a toy. Leo walked into the hallway. He was holding his math notebook. He looked at me, then at the woman pinned against the front door. "Dad," he whispered. "Is that the lady from the tablet?" See, Vanessa had reached out once, 4 years ago. A video call. She was drunk on a beach in Ibiza. She talked at him for 2 minutes, called him my little voyager, and then hung up. Leo had asked if she was a famous person. "Leo, go to your room," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Lock the door." "But Dad." "Go. Now." He ran. I heard the lock click. I turned back to Vanessa. She was adjusting her sweater, looking annoyed rather than devastated. "You're poisoning him against me," she spat. "I haven't mentioned your name in 3 years, Vanessa. You did this. You left. You have been gone for 10 years. You cannot just walk in here. I'm his mother. I gave birth to him. That bond is eternal. You can't break that with paperwork. I have a court order that says otherwise. I have sole custody. You have nothing. If you don't leave in the next 30 seconds, I am calling 911 and reporting a home invasion." She stared at me. She was assessing the situation, looking for a weakness. Then she laughed, a cold, tinkling sound. "I have money now, Mark. I have a lot of money. My brand deals are huge. I can buy him anything. I can give him the world. What can you give him? This dump." She gestured around my modest, clean, safe living room. "I give him a father who stays," I said. She rolled her eyes. "Fine. I'll go to my hotel. But this isn't over. I'm taking him to Paris next month. I have a shoot there, and it's time he became a global citizen. Get his passport ready." She turned and walked out, leaving the door wide open. The rain blew in, soaking the rug. The legal reality check. I spent Wednesday morning on the phone with my lawyer, Sarah. Sarah is a shark. She handled the custody case years ago. She can't just take him, right? I asked, pacing the kitchen while Leo was at school. Tell me she has no ground. "Mark, listen to me," Sarah said. Her voice was clipped. "You have sole custody. That is the gold standard. However, biology is a powerful factor in family court. If she has money now, and if she petitions for visitation, a judge might grant it. Reintegration therapy. Supervised visits. The courts always aim for reunification if the parent is deemed safe." Safe? She abandoned him 10 years ago. If she presents herself as stable, wealthy, and rehabilitated, a judge might see a mother who made a mistake and wants to make amends. We need to be proactive. Do not let her see him. Do not let her pick him up from school. Document everything. I called Leo's school immediately. I sent them a copy of the custody order. I told the principal, the secretary, and Leo's teacher that under no circumstances was a woman named Vanessa allowed within 50 feet of my son. Then I checked my bank account. I make a decent living now, but I don't have brand deal money. I don't have litigation money. If she wants to bleed me dry in court, she probably can. The stalking begins. Thursday. Yesterday. I went to pick up Leo from school. I park in the same spot every day. As I got out of the car, I saw a black SUV parked across the street. The window rolled down. Vanessa was sitting in the back, wearing oversized sunglasses. She was holding a phone up, filming. She was live streaming. I kept my head down, walked to the gate, grabbed Leo, and marched him back to the car. "Dad, that's her again," Leo said. He was shaking. "Why is she pointing her phone at us?" "Ignore her, bud. Just get in." Later that night, my friend sent me a link to her Instagram. She has 500K followers. The video she shot at the school was up. Caption: "Finally reunited with my heart. The system is trying to keep us apart, But a mother's love knows no borders. My poor baby looks so neglected. He needs a haircut and some style. Mama is here to fix everything. #reunited #custody battle #my son #boymom. The comments were nauseating. Stay strong, Queen. Father's rights are a joke, go get him. He looks sad, he knows his mama is back. I felt sick. She was using him for content. She didn't want Leo. She wanted the reunited mother engagement spike. I showed the video to Sarah. She saved it. This is good, she said. This proves exploitation. Keep gathering evidence. The confrontation. That brings us to today. Friday. I work from home on Fridays. Leo had an in-service day, so he was home gaming in his room. At 10 a.m., there was a pounding on the door. Not a knock. Pounding. I checked the camera. It wasn't Vanessa. It was 2 police officers and Vanessa. My heart hammered against my ribs. I opened the door. Sir, we received a welfare check request for a Leo Miller, the officer said. He looked bored. Vanessa stood behind him, looking tragic. She was wiping away fake tears. I'm his father. He's fine, I said. She claims you're holding him hostage and that the home is unsanitary, the officer said. Come in, I said. I stepped aside. The officers walked in. They saw the clean living room. They saw the chore chart on the wall. They saw the smell of cleaning solution because I had just mopped. Leo. I called. Leo came out of his room, wearing his headset around his neck. Yeah, Dad. These officers just want to say hi. The officer looked at Leo. You okay, son? You look healthy. I'm fine, Leo said. He looked at Vanessa. Why is she here? Vanessa pushed past the cop. Leo. Baby. Look what I brought you. She pulled a brand new iPhone 15 Pro Max out of her purse. It's for you. So we can talk without him listening. Leo stared at the phone. He looked at me. He looked at the officers. I don't want it, Leo said. His voice was small but clear. Don't be silly, darling. It's the best one. And look. She pulled out a brochure. I booked our tickets. Disney World next week. Just you and me. Ma'am, the officer said, stepping between them. The child appears fine. The home is clean. You need to leave. I have rights. Vanessa screamed. The mask slipped. The namaste vibe vanished, replaced by pure, ugly entitlement. I am his mother. I carried him. I want my son. He doesn't know you. I shouted back, losing my cool. You are a stranger to him. He's mine, she screeched. She lunged for Leo. Leo scrambled back, tripping over his own feet. The officer grabbed Vanessa's arm. She thrashed, scratching the cop's face. Ma'am, you are under arrest for assaulting an officer, the cop said, pinning her against the wall. As they cuffed her, she locked eyes with me. It wasn't rage anymore. It was a cold, calculated promise. I will ruin you, Mark. I will take everything. I will bury you in legal fees until you are living in a box, and then I will take him. They dragged her out. Leo threw up on the hallway carpet. The aftermath. I spent the last 4 hours calming Leo down. He had a full-blown panic attack. He kept asking if he had to go to Disney World. He asked if the police were going to take me away. I promised him he was safe. I promised him I would never let her take him. But now, sitting here in the dark, I am terrified. She made bail. I know she did. Her parents have money even if she doesn't. She called me from a blocked number 20 minutes ago. She didn't scream. She whispered. You embarrassed me in front of my fans, Mark. I was live-streaming the audio. Everyone thinks you're an abusive monster keeping a son from his mother. I have a lawyer flying in from New York tomorrow. Get ready. I checked her Instagram. She posted a photo of her bruised wrist, from the handcuffs. Caption: Police brutality. My ex turned the cops on me when I tried to give my son a gift. The corruption runs deep. I need your help, guys. GoFundMe link in bio for legal defense. It already has $10,000 in donations. I am a regular guy. I make $65K a year. I drive a Honda Civic. I don't have an army of internet strangers funding my war chest. I have the truth, and I have a scared little boy who just wants to finish his long division in peace. I don't know if that's enough. I will update when I can. Right now, I have to go check the locks again. Update one date, 5 days later. It has been 5 days since the police incident. Things have escalated faster than I thought possible. First, the GoFundMe. It's up to $45,000. She is spinning a narrative that is so divorced from reality, I almost admire the creativity. She claims I kidnapped Leo when he was a baby and fled the state. She claims she has been searching for us for 10 years. She claims I brainwashed him. The internet mob is real. I have received death threats in my DMs. People found my LinkedIn. They are contacting my employer, demanding I be fired for child abuse. My boss, thankfully, knows the situation. He told me to lock down my socials and take a few days off. But the pressure is there. Yesterday, I was served. It wasn't a standard visitation petition. It was an emergency motion for full custody based on parental alienation. Her lawyer, the one from New York, is claiming that by refusing to let her see him, I am causing irreparable psychological harm, and that I am unfit because I am hostile to the mother-child bond. The audacity is breathtaking. I met with Sarah, my lawyer. She looked tired. This lawyer she hired is a pit bull, Sarah said. They are going to flood us with motions. They want to exhaust you. They want you to run out of money so you settle. I won't settle, I said. She is dangerous. Mark, look at this. Sarah slid a folder across the desk. It was a printout of Vanessa's blog from 8 years ago. Deleted now, but the Wayback Machine captured it. Post title, The Shackle of Biology. Content, I realized today, watching the sun set over the Mekong Delta, that I was never meant to be a mother. The child was a parasitic anchor. Leaving was an act of supreme self-love. I am not a vessel. I am a universe. We have this, Sarah said. We have the notarized abandonment letter. We have the decade of silence. But judges can be weird about alienation. You need to be perfect. No angry texts. No confrontations. You need to be the calmest man on earth. We went to court for the preliminary hearing this morning. Vanessa was there. She was wearing a modest navy dress, no jewelry, hair pulled back. She looked like a PTA mom. She didn't look at me. Her lawyer stood up. Your Honor, my client was suffering from severe postpartum psychosis 10 years ago. She fled to save her life. She has spent the last decade healing, undergoing therapy, and preparing to be the mother her son deserves. Mr. Miller has taken advantage of her illness to steal her child and poison him against her. It was a lie. A massive, calculated lie. Postpartum psychosis? She was posting about mojitos and hookups the week she left. But the judge listened. Mr. Miller, the judge said, looking at me over his glasses. The court takes allegations of alienation seriously. A child needs both parents. She abandoned him, Your Honor, Sarah interjected. For 10 years. No cards. No calls. No child support. I was blocked. Vanessa sobbed. It was a perfect, single tear. He changed his number. He moved. We have proof of residence at the same address for 6 years, Sarah argued. The judge held up a hand. I am ordering a guardian ad litem, GThel, to interview the child. Until then, I am granting the mother 3 supervised visits per week, 2 hours each, at the court center. No overnight stays. No travel. 3 times a week. I choked out. Your Honor, he is. Title, My son failed school because his teacher hated me. I found her hidden messages about us and took the story straight to the board. The setup. I am looking at a report card that claims my son has a 42% average in English literature. My son Leo is 12. He reads at a college level. Last year, he won a district-wide essay contest. He devours books the way other kids devour candy. Yet, according to Mrs. Vance, he is functionally illiterate, disruptive, and incapable of following basic instructions. I knew this was a lie the moment I saw the grade. I just did not know it was a conspiracy until last Tuesday. This is not a story about a misunderstanding. This is a story about a teacher who decided to destroy a child's confidence because his father refused to do a favor for her husband 3 years ago. Here is the context you need. I own a mid-sized landscaping and hardscaping business in our town. It is not a massive corporation, but we do high-end work. 3 years ago, Mrs. Vance's husband, Gary, applied for a project manager position with my company. I interviewed him. Gary was unqualified, arrogant, and had a history of cutting corners at his previous firm. I did not hire him. I hired a candidate who actually knew how to grade a slope properly. I never thought about Gary Vance again. I certainly did not make the connection when Leo was assigned to Mrs. Vance's 7th grade homeroom and English class. The trouble started in the second week of September. Leo came home quiet. He is usually a chatterbox, eager to tell me about whatever fantasy series he is reading. That day, he went straight to his room. When I asked him what was wrong, he said he got a 0 on his first homework assignment. I asked to see it. It was a simple reading comprehension worksheet. Leo had filled out every answer. Across the top, in red ink, Mrs. Vance had written, illegible. 0 out of 10. I looked at the paper. Leo has handwriting that looks like drafting font. It is precise, small, and perfectly readable. I can read it from 3 feet away. I told Leo it must be a mistake. I emailed Mrs. Vance that evening. My email was polite. I attached a photo of the illegible assignment and asked for clarification on what specific parts she could not read so we could work on it. Her reply came the next morning at 6 a.m. Mr. OP, in my classroom, I require standard cursive or standard print. Leo's writing is too small and stylized. I do not have time to decode it. He needs to follow instructions. The grade stands. I was annoyed, but I let it go. I told Leo to write bigger. 2 weeks later, Leo brought home a quiz. The score was a 60%. I reviewed the questions. They were multiple choice. Leo had circled the correct answers for 3 questions that were marked wrong. I cross-referenced the answers with the textbook. Leo was right. I emailed Mrs. Vance again. Mrs. Vance, I was reviewing Leo's quiz on the giver. Questions 3, 5, and 8 are marked incorrect, but according to page 42 and 45 of the text, his answers are correct. Can you please review this? Her response was immediate this time. Mr. OP, this was a listening comprehension quiz based on my lecture, not just the text. Leo was likely daydreaming and missed the nuance of what I explained in class. He needs to pay attention rather than relying on the book. This was the first red flag that made my stomach turn. It is the perfect defense. I was not in the class. I could not prove what she said or didn't say. She was gaslighting my son using the lecture versus text loophole. By October, Leo was failing. He was not just failing, he was miserable. He stopped reading for fun. He started calling himself stupid. He told me that Mrs. Vance made him sit in the back corner because his fidgeting was distracting the other students. Leo does not fidget. He sits like a statue. I requested a parent-teacher conference. The conference. I walked into that classroom prepared to be diplomatic. I wanted to solve the problem. Mrs. Vance sat behind her desk. She did not stand up to shake my hand. She gestured to a tiny student chair on the other side. She started talking before I even sat down. Leo is widely unprepared for this grade level, she said. His attitude is poor. He challenges my authority. He refuses to adapt to classroom standards. I asked for examples of him challenging authority. He questions my grading, she said. He argues about answers. It is disruptive. He is pointing out factual errors, I said. I checked the quiz myself. She smiled. It was a tight, condescending smile. You are a landscaper, Mr. OP. I am an educator with 20 years of experience. I think I know how to interpret a literary quiz better than you do. There it was. The dig. My profession has nothing to do with whether the giver is a dystopia or a utopia, I said. And my son is not failing because he doesn't know the material. He is failing because you are grading him on a different scale. If you are accusing me of bias, you should be very careful, she said. Her voice dropped an octave. Leo is struggling. You are in denial. Maybe if you spent more time helping him study and less time digging ditches, he would be doing better. I stood up. I knew that if I stayed, I would say something that would get me banned from the school grounds. I will be speaking to the principal, I said. Go ahead, she said. Principal Skinner and I have worked together for 15 years. He knows my track record. She was right. The meeting with the principal was useless. Principal Skinner was a tired man who clearly wanted to retire. He listened to me, looked at the grades, and gave me the standard speech about supporting the teacher's autonomy. He promised to monitor the situation, which is code for I will do absolutely nothing. The escalation. November was a nightmare. Leo brought home an essay. It was heavily marked up in red. Not corrections of grammar, but critiques of his opinions. He had written an essay arguing that a character's choice was justified. Mrs. Vance gave him AD-. Her note, this interpretation is immature and lacks moral grounding. I showed the essay to my sister-in-law, Sarah. Sarah is a professor of English literature at the State University. She read it in silence. This is a B+ paper at a college freshman level, Sarah said. Maybe an A, depending on the curve. This isn't grading. This is a hit job. Can you write an assessment? I asked. Something formal? I will write a sworn affidavit if you want, she said. I started collecting data. I stopped emailing Mrs. Vance. I started BCCing the principal and the vice principal on every communication, even though I knew they were ignoring it. I wanted a paper trail. Then came the Lost Project. The final project for the semester was a diorama and a 5-page report. Leo worked on it for 3 weekends. We built a detailed scene from Treasure Island. It was professional quality. I helped him with the wood base, but he did all the painting and writing. Leo took it to school on a Tuesday. On Wednesday, the grade portal showed a missing flag for the project. 0. I asked Leo. He was in tears. I turned it in, he insisted. I put it right on her desk with everyone else's. I went to the school immediately. I went to the front office and demanded to be let into the classroom to find the project. Mrs. Vance met me at the door. Mr. Opie, you cannot just barge in here. Where is his project? I asked. He never turned it in, she said. I graded all the projects yesterday. Leo's was not there. He brought it in yesterday morning, I said. I drove him. I saw him walk into the building with it. He probably threw it in the dumpster, she said. Kids do that when they know they haven't done the work. I looked around the room. The other dioramas were lined up on the back shelf. Leo's was nowhere. I want to check the security cameras in the hallway, I said. If he walked in with it and walked into this room with it, it has to be here. Mrs. Vance's eyes flickered. Just for a second. Cameras are for administration use only. You are disrupting my class. I left. But I did not go home. I went to the administration office and filed a formal request to view the footage. They told me it would take 48 hours to process. That night, Leo was despondent. She hates me, Dad. I don't know why, but she hates me. I just want to switch schools. We are not running, I told him. We are going to fix this. The breakthrough. The breakthrough didn't come from the cameras. It came from incompetence. Our district uses a platform called ClassHub for submitting digital assignments and communicating with parents. It's a terrible app, glitchy and slow. On Thursday evening, Leo needed to check a prompt for a new assignment. His iPad was dead, so I handed him my laptop. He logged into ClassHub. Dad, it looks weird, he said. I looked at the screen. It wasn't Leo's student dashboard. It was Mrs. Vance's teacher dashboard. My heart stopped. I realized what had happened. During the parent-teacher conference, Mrs. Vance had turned her monitor to show me something. She had logged in. My browser, which I use for my business and have set to remember passwords and sessions aggressively, must have captured a session token, or she had logged in on a guest device during the open house back in September and never logged out. Whatever the technical glitch, I was staring at the back end of her gradebook. I knew I was in a gray legal area. I did not care. I needed proof. I clicked on the Messages tab. There were the standard messages to parents. Then I saw a folder labeled Private, staff chat. I clicked it. It was a direct messaging thread between Mrs. Vance and another teacher, Mrs. Higgins, the science teacher. I scrolled back to September. Vance, guess who I have in my homeroom this year? The landscaper's brat. Higgins, the one who turned down Gary? Vance, yep. The arrogance of that man. He thinks he's so high and mighty because he owns a few trucks. Well, let's see how his genius son does when he's held to rigorous standards. Higgins, don't get caught. Vance, please. The kid has sloppy handwriting and an attitude. It'll be easy. I'm going to break him. Gary is still bitter about that interview. It's payback time. I felt the blood boil in my veins. It was explicitly premeditated. I kept scrolling. I found the entry from the day of the Lost project. Vance, the brat turned in a project that looked like his daddy built it. No way a 12-year-old made that base. I tossed it. Higgins, you threw it away? Vance, put it in the recycling bin in the janitor's closet down the hall. Told the dad he never turned it in. He's demanding camera footage. LOL. Higgins, is that safe? Vance, Skinner won't check the tapes for a missing art project. He's too lazy. And if he does, I'll just say I misplaced it. But the grade stands. I grabbed my phone. I took photos of the screen. Then I took a screen recording of me scrolling through the messages, showing the URLs, the timestamps, and the user profile to prove it wasn't a fake screenshot. I printed everything. Then, I went to the trash folder in her digital gradebook. There were Leo's missing assignments. Digital files he had uploaded that she had deleted without grading. I restored them and downloaded them all. I had her. I had her dead to rights. But I wasn't just going to get her fired. I was going to ensure she never taught again. The preparation. I called my brother-in-law, Mark. Mark is a corporate litigator. He is the kind of lawyer who smiles when he smells blood. Is the evidence admissible? I asked him. You stumbled upon an open session, Mark said. You didn't hack it. You didn't guess a password. She left her credentials active on a device or the session persisted. We can argue that. But honestly, for a school board hearing, we don't need criminal court standards. We need public relations nightmare standards. We spent the weekend building the file. We had the chat logs admitting to the conspiracy and the motive, Gary. The chat log admitting to destroying student property, the diorama. The restored digital files proving Leo had submitted work she claimed was missing. My sister-in-law's academic assessment of Leo's failing essays. A timeline of every interaction, every email, and every gaslighting attempt. Mark drafted a letter. It wasn't a lawsuit yet. It was a notice of intent to present evidence to the school board. We sent a copy to Principal Skinner, the superintendent, and the school board president on Monday morning. The meeting. I received a call from Principal Skinner within 20 minutes of the email going out. Mr. OP, he sounded breathless. I think we need to sit down privately. There is no need to involve the board. The board is already involved, I said. I will see you at the monthly meeting on Thursday. I have registered for the public comment section. We can resolve this internally, Skinner pleaded. Mrs. Vance is willing to review the grades. Reviewing the grades is not enough, I said. She admitted to targeting my son to settle a personal score. She destroyed his property. This is abuse. I am not negotiating with you. Thursday night came. The school board meeting was usually a boring affair about budget allocation and bus routes. Tonight, the room was packed. I had brought Mark. I had also brought Gary, Mrs. Vance's husband. Well, I didn't bring him. I had Mark subpoena him for a potential civil suit regarding the destruction of property. The diorama materials cost money, just to rattle them. He didn't have to show up to the board meeting, but he did. He looked angry. Mrs. Vance looked pale. When my turn came, I walked to the podium. I did not yell. I spoke very clearly. My name is Name. My son is in 7th grade. For 3 months, he has been systematically bullied. Not by another student, but by his English teacher, Mrs. Vance. Murmurs in the room. Mrs. Vance stood up. This is slander. Sit down, Mrs. Vance, the board president said. He had seen the packet we sent. He looked furious. I continued. I am not here to complain about subjective grading. I am here to present evidence of a conspiracy. I connected my laptop to the projector. Mark handled the tech. This, I pointed to the screen, is a transcript of a conversation between Mrs. Vance and a colleague. I read the text out loud. The landscaper's brat. I'm going to break him. Gary is still bitter about that interview. The room went dead silent. You could hear the hum of the air conditioner. I looked at Gary Vance in the back row. He was turning beet red. Everyone was looking at him. He was the motive. His professional failure was the reason a 12-year-old was crying himself to sleep. I moved to the next slide. I tossed it. Put it in the recycling bin. Skinner won't check the tapes. I looked at Principal Skinner. He was staring at his shoes. Mrs. Vance destroyed my son's project, I said. She lied to my face. She lied to the principal. She lied to this district. She admitted to targeting a child because I didn't hire her husband. I turned to the board. This is misconduct. This is harassment. And judging by the science teacher in these texts who encouraged it, the rot goes deeper than one person. Mrs. Vance was crying now. That's private. You hacked me. You left your account logged in, I said. And you used school resources to plot the abuse of a student. There is no expectation of privacy for misconduct on government servers. Mark stepped up. We are asking for the immediate termination of Mrs. Vance's contract. We are asking for an independent audit of all grades she has assigned to students whose parents might have slighted her. And we are filing a police report for the theft and destruction of the diorama. The aftermath. The meeting didn't end. It exploded. The board went into an emergency executive session immediately. I took Leo out for ice cream while they deliberated. He didn't know the full details, just that I had found proof he wasn't stupid. The next morning, the email came. Mrs. Vance was placed on unpaid administrative leave, pending a formal investigation. Principal Skinner was issued a formal reprimand for failing to investigate my initial claims regarding the camera footage. But that wasn't the end. 2 days later, other parents started coming forward. Once the story broke, local news picked it up. Thanks to the public nature of the meeting, people started connecting dots. A contractor whose daughter failed Mrs. Vance's class right after he had a billing dispute with Gary. A real estate agent whose son was benched from the play Mrs. Vance directed after the agent failed to sell the Vance's house at the asking price. It was a pattern. She used her classroom as a weapon to fight her husband's battles. The conclusion. It has been 2 months. Mrs. Vance was fired. The school board voted 7-0. She lost her tenure, her pension benefits are in litigation, and the state licensing board has opened a review to revoke her teaching credential permanently. Principal Skinner chose to retire early, effectively immediately. Mrs. Higgins, the science teacher, was suspended for 2 weeks and required to undergo sensitivity training. She got off light, in my opinion, but she turned state's evidence against Vance to save her own skin. Leo's grades were expunged. The new English teacher, a young guy fresh out of college, reviewed Leo's work. He gave him an A. He told me Leo is one of the brightest kids in the class. We found the diorama, by the way. The janitor hadn't emptied the recycling bin in the closet yet because it was mostly just old textbooks. It was smashed, but we found it. I kept the broken mast of the ship. It sits on my desk as a reminder. Leo is back to his old self. He's reading Dune right now. He asked me the other day, "Dad, do you think I could be a lawyer like Uncle Mark?" I told him, "Leo, with your attention to detail, you can be whatever you want. Just don't be a teacher like Mrs. Vance." Last week, I saw Gary Vance at the hardware store. He saw me coming down the aisle. He turned his cart around and walked the other way. I didn't say a word. I just bought my bags of mulch and went to work. Edit. A lot of you are asking about the legal side of accessing her messages. We are in the clear. The school district's acceptable use policy states that users have no expectation of privacy on district accounts. By using the school platform to conspire, she forfeited her rights. Plus, since the session was active on a device legally in my possession, via my son, it wasn't unauthorized access under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, at least according to Mark. The district didn't want to fight that battle in court because the discovery phase would have exposed just how negligent they were with data security. Update 1. I didn't think I'd need to add this, but some people are asking if I feel bad for ruining her career over petty drama. Let me be clear. I didn't ruin her career. She ruined it when she decided to bully a 12-year-old. She is an adult. She was in a position of power. She abused that power to hurt a child because she couldn't handle her husband's professional rejection. If she had keyed my truck, fine. I would have been angry. If she had left bad reviews for my business, annoying, but whatever. But she went after my son. She made him feel worthless. She made him doubt his own mind. That is unforgivable. I sleep very well at night. Update 2. Small victory. The school board just announced a new policy regarding grade disputes. If a parent contests a grade based on factual error, like the quiz answers, it now goes to a third-party mediator, not the principal. They are calling it the Leo Protocol. My kid thinks he's famous. We are rebuilding the diorama this weekend. Not for a grade. Just because we want to finish it. Final thoughts. If your kid tells you a teacher has it out for them, listen. Don't assume the teacher is always right. Don't assume the principal will handle it. Trust your gut. Check the receipts. And if you have to, burn the whole thing down to protect your child. Because if you don't, who will? End of post. My phone rang at 2:14 a.m. on a Tuesday. I know the exact time because I was already awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the quarterly logistics report for my trucking company. When the screen lit up the dark room, the brightness stung my eyes. I didn't recognize the number. It was a local area code, but not one saved in my contacts. Usually, I ignore these. Spam calls, wrong numbers, or emergencies that aren't my problem. But for some reason, the persistence of the vibration against the nightstand made my stomach turn. It was a visceral reaction, a sudden tightening in my gut that I hadn't felt in years. I swiped right. Hello. My voice was rough with sleep and skepticism. Dad. The word hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. It was a single syllable, but it carried the weight of 7 years of silence. 7 years of unanswered texts, returned birthday cards, and a hollow ache in my chest that I had eventually learned to pack away in a box labeled past. It was Caleb. My hand tightened around the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. I sat up, swinging my legs over the side of the bed, my feet touching the cold hardwood floor. The room was silent, save for the hum of the HVAC unit. Caleb, I said. I didn't make it a question. I was confirming reality. I didn't know if you'd answer, he said. His voice sounded older, deeper, but the cadence was the same. It was the voice of the boy I had taught to ride a bike, the boy I had coached in Little League, the boy who had looked me in the eye 7 years ago and told me he wished I was dead. I'm here, I said. I kept my voice neutral. My therapist, Dr. Evans, had drilled this into me. Emotional detachment is your shield. Why are you calling at 2 in the morning? I'm in trouble, Dad. I didn't know who else to call. Mom. Mom kicked me out. She took the car. She took the savings. I'm at a 24-hour diner off I-95. I don't have anywhere to go. The irony was so sharp it almost made me laugh. But I didn't laugh. I remembered. I remembered the day he cut me off. I remembered the sneer on his face, a mirror image of his mother's. I remembered the accusation that I was a selfish, hoarding miser who didn't care about his family. You're at the diner? I asked. Yeah, please. I just need a ride. Maybe a place to crash for a night. Just until I sort this out. I closed my eyes. In that darkness, the last decade played back like a high-speed film reel. I saw everything. I saw the lies Linda spun. I saw Caleb absorbing them like a sponge. I saw myself begging for visitation. And I saw the man I had become since they left, a man who was whole, successful, and finally at peace. Caleb, I said, and my voice was steadier than I felt. I can send an Uber to take you to a motel. I'll pay for the room for 2 nights. You won't come. The disappointment was palpable. He sounded like a child again. No, I said. I won't come. But why? I'm your son. I know, I said. And that's why this is the hardest thing I've ever had to do. But I remember, Caleb. I remember everything. To understand why I didn't get in my car that night, you have to understand the history. You have to understand the slow, agonizing death of a relationship that I thought was unbreakable. This isn't just about a divorce. This is about a systematic dismantling of my character, orchestrated by a woman I once loved, and executed by the son I would have died for. It started 20 years ago. Linda and I were high school sweethearts, the classic cliché. We married young, had Caleb young, and struggled young. I worked 2 jobs, one in construction and one stocking shelves at night, while Linda stayed home with the baby. We were a team, or so I thought. But as I started to climb the ladder, moving from manual labor into project management and eventually starting my own logistics coordination firm, the dynamic shifted. Linda liked the money. She didn't like the work required to get it. By the time Caleb was 12, I was working 60-hour weeks. We had a nice house in the suburbs, 2 cars, and vacations to Florida every summer. But in Linda's narrative, I wasn't the provider working hard for the family. I was the absentee father who cared more about his business than his wife and son. It started with subtle digs. "Dad's late again," she would say at the dinner table, sighing dramatically. "I guess his clients are more important than your science fair project, Caleb." I wasn't late because I wanted to be. I was late because a shipment had overturned on the highway, and I was the only one who could coordinate the cleanup and salvage the contract. But when I walked in the door, exhausted and covered in road dust, Caleb wouldn't look at me. He would just push his peas around his plate, his eyes fixed on the table. "I'm sorry, bud," I'd say, reaching for his shoulder. He would flinch. Just a tiny movement, but it felt like a slap. "It's okay, Dad," he would mumble. "Mom helped me. She always helps me." That was the seed. The idea that Mom was the caregiver, the martyr, the one who sacrificed, while Dad was the wallet, the distant figure, the necessary evil. The real escalation happened when Caleb turned 15. That was the year the market took a dip and my business took a hit. We weren't poor, but we had to tighten our belts. No Florida trip. No new lease on Linda's luxury SUV. We had to stick to a budget. Linda did not handle no well. She sat Caleb down without me, and told him that the reason we couldn't go on vacation was that I had made bad investments. She implied that I was gambling the family's future away. She didn't say the words gambling addiction, but she painted the picture. She sighed about how she was trying to save money on groceries while I was throwing it away. I found this out months later when I tried to refuse to buy Caleb a $200 pair of sneakers. "Why not?" he snapped, his voice cracking with teenage hormones. "You blew thousands on those stocks. Why can't I have shoes?" "What stocks?" I asked, bewildered. "Caleb, the market is down. Clients are delaying payments. We have to be careful." "Mom said you lost it all," he spat. "She said you're ruining us." I confronted Linda that night. It was one of our screaming matches, the kind where the neighbors probably turned up their TVs. "How could you tell him that?" I demanded. "I'm working my fingers to the bone to keep this house. He deserves to know why his life is sucking." Linda screamed back. "You're the man. You're supposed to provide. If you can't, don't blame me for being honest with him." She wasn't being honest. She was rewriting reality to make herself the victim and me the villain. And because she was home with him every day after school, and I was at the office putting out fires, she had the airtime. She controlled the narrative. The divorce happened when Caleb was 16. I didn't want it. I tried counseling. I tried date nights. I tried cutting my work hours, which nearly bankrupted the company. But Linda had found someone else, a consultant she met at the gym who drove a Porsche and didn't have grease under his fingernails. She filed. And then the war began. If I thought the subtle alienation was bad, the divorce was a nuclear strike. Linda went for full custody. She claimed I was emotionally abusive. She claimed I was unstable. She claimed I had a temper. None of it was true. There were no police reports, no history of violence, nothing. But family court is a strange beast. It operates on perception as much as fact. We settled on 50-50 custody, but 50-50 is just a number on a paper. The reality was different. Caleb didn't want to come to my apartment. I had moved into a 2-bedroom complex about 20 minutes away. It was clean, safe, and furnished, but it wasn't the house. It wasn't home. Every time it was my weekend, there was an excuse. Caleb has a stomach ache. Caleb has a heavy study load. Caleb is depressed and doesn't want to leave his room. When I did get him, he was surly and withdrawn. He spent the entire time texting his mother. If I tried to take him to a movie, he'd say, "Mom said this movie sucks." If I cooked dinner, he'd say, "Mom makes this better." It was like living with a ghost who hated me. One specific weekend stands out. It was his 17th birthday. I had planned a camping trip. Just the two of us. We used to love camping when he was little. I bought new gear, researched the best fishing spots, and took a Friday off work. When I pulled up to the house to pick him up, Linda came out. She was wearing a smug little smile that made my blood boil. "He's not going," she said. "It's my weekend, Linda. It's court-ordered. He's 17, David. He can vote with his feet. He doesn't want to go into the woods with you. He thinks it's creepy." Creepy? We've camped dozens of times. He's grown up. He has a party tonight. With his friends. At my house. I looked past her. Caleb was in the window. He was watching. I waved. He didn't wave back. He just let the curtain fall. I stood there on the driveway of the house I was still paying for, feeling a level of impotence that is hard to describe. I could call the police. I could force the issue. I could drag my son kicking and screaming into my truck. But what would that achieve? It would only validate Linda's narrative that I was controlling and aggressive. So I left. I went camping alone. I sat by a fire in the woods, drank a six-pack of cheap beer, and cried until my throat was raw. The financial bleeding was the next phase. Linda was a master at manipulating the child support system. She hid her income, she was working off the books for her new boyfriend's business, and inflated her expenses. I was paying nearly 40% of my net income to her. But it wasn't enough. It was never enough. Caleb needed a car. Linda called me. "He needs a reliable vehicle for school," she said. "I found a nice Honda for $8,000. You send the check." "I can't just drop $8,000, Linda. I can do half. We can split it." "I don't have $4,000, she screeched. "I'm a single mother. You're the CEO. I'm a small business owner, Linda. And business is tight." She hung up. An hour later, I got a text from Caleb. "Thanks for showing me how much I'm worth to you. Mom is selling her jewelry to buy me the car. Don't worry about it." The guilt was a physical blow. It was designed to be. I knew she wasn't selling jewelry. I knew she was manipulating him. But I couldn't prove it to him. To him, I was the miser, and she was the saint sacrificing her diamonds for his mobility. I broke. I sent the check for the full $8,000. 2 weeks later, Caleb posted a picture on Instagram. He was leaning against a BMW. The caption read, "Mom hooked it up. Best gift ever." It wasn't the Honda. She had taken my $8,000, added whatever she had, or whatever her boyfriend had, and bought him a used BMW. And she took all the credit. I was never mentioned. I was just the silent bank account. I tried to talk to him about it. "Caleb, I sent the money for that car." "You sent some money," he sneered. "Mom made it happen. You just did the bare minimum required by law." The bare minimum? $8,000 is not the bare minimum. Whatever, Dad. Stop trying to buy my love. It's pathetic. That word, pathetic, stuck with me. The final break happened over college. Caleb got into a decent state university. I was proud. I had a 529 plan set up. It wasn't enough for a full ride, but it was significant. About $60,000. Linda convinced him that I was going to steal the money. "You need to get the money in your account," she told him. "Dad is going to use it to buy a new truck for his company. He calls it a business expense." You can't trust him. Caleb demanded control of the 529. Legally, it was in my name as the custodian. I told him no. I told him I would pay the tuition directly to the school. This is standard procedure. It ensures the money goes to education. He exploded. "You're holding it hostage," he screamed over the phone. You're trying to control me. You just want me to beg. I want to make sure your tuition is paid, Caleb. That's it. Mom was right about you. You're a control-freak narcissist. He refused to talk to me for months. When the tuition bill came, I paid it directly to the bursar's office. I sent him the receipt. He didn't reply. The first semester ended. I looked at his grades. He had a 1.8 GPA. He was failing. I drove down to the campus. I needed to see him. I needed to understand what was happening. I found him in his dorm. He looked terrible. Pale, thin, hungover. "What are you doing here?" he asked, blocking the doorway. "I saw your grades, Caleb. We need to talk." "I'm dropping out," he said. "What? Why?" "I can't handle the stress. And I don't want your money. I don't want anything from you. Caleb, you have a free ride essentially. Just buckle down. I'm moving back in with Mom. She understands me. She supports my mental health. You just care about the grades." He slammed the door in my face. He did move back in with Linda. And then came the letter. It was a certified letter. I had to sign for it. It wasn't from a lawyer. It was from Caleb. "Dad, I am writing this to tell you that I am done. I am done with your manipulation, your emotional abuse, and your toxic presence in my life. You have made my childhood a living hell. You abandoned Mom emotionally long before you left physically. You used money to control us. You never cared about me as a person, only as a trophy. I am changing my name. I am taking Mom's maiden name. I do not want to be associated with you. Do not contact me. Do not come to the house. Do not call. If you do, I will get a restraining order. Mom has told me everything. I know about the affairs. I know about the secret accounts. I know who you really are. Goodbye. Caleb." I sat at my kitchen table and read that letter until the words blurred. The affairs? There were no affairs. The secret accounts? I barely had a savings account after the divorce settlement. It was all fiction. A tapestry of lies woven by Linda to ensure she kept him. She had won. She wanted to hurt me, and she found the one weapon that could destroy me, my son. I honored his request. I didn't call. I didn't write. The first year was the hardest. It was a dark, suffocating grief. It's a strange thing to grieve someone who is still alive. You mourn the milestones you miss. His 21st birthday passed silently. I sat with a cupcake and a candle, alone. I fell into a depression. I let the business slide. I gained 30 pounds. I drank too much whiskey. I spent hours on Reddit forums, reading about narcissistic personality disorder and parental alienation syndrome. It was like reading my own biography. I realized I wasn't alone, but that didn't make the loneliness any less sharp. But then, around year 2, something shifted. I woke up one morning and realized I hadn't thought about Linda in 24 hours. I realized that the constant drama, the walking on eggshells, the fear of the next phone call, it was gone. The silence was painful, yes, but it was also peaceful. I started to rebuild. I went to the gym. I hired a consultant to help me restructure the business. I started hiking. I met someone. Her name was Sarah. She was a librarian. Quiet, kind, with a laugh that sounded like wind chimes. She had no baggage. She had grown kids who visited on holidays and actually liked her. We started dating slowly. I told her about Caleb on the 3rd date. I laid it all out. My son hates me. He thinks I'm a monster. If you're with me, you get the baggage of a man whose own child wants him dead. Sarah reached across the table and took my hand. I judge a man by how he treats me, she said, not by the stories his ex-wife tells. With Sarah's support, I thrived. My business exploded. We landed a massive contract with a national retailer. I bought a new house, a beautiful place with a lake view. I bought a boat. I traveled. We went to Italy. We went to Japan. I was happy. Genuinely, deeply happy. But I never forgot. I kept a file. In a fireproof safe in my office, I kept everything. Every receipt I ever paid. Every tuition transfer. The canceled checks for the child support. The emails begging for visitation. The text messages where Linda admitted to using the money for herself. I kept it all. Not because I planned to use it, but because I needed to know that I wasn't crazy. It was my anchor to reality. Years 3, 4, 5, and 6 passed. I heard rumors through the grapevine. We lived in a mid-sized city, and social circles overlap. I heard that Linda's boyfriend had left her. I heard she had blown through the settlement money. I heard she was working retail. And I heard about Caleb. I heard he was working at a car dealership. Then a bartender. Then unemployed. I heard he had a gambling problem. I heard he got married to a girl named Jessica, and they divorced 6 months later. I didn't reach out. He had drawn the line. Do not contact me. I respected it. But I watched from afar. I checked his social media from a burner account. I saw the decline. The angry posts. The conspiracy theories. The look in his eyes in the selfies, hollow, angry, lost. He looked like his mother. Then came year 7. The present day. The phone call at 2 a.m. After I hung up on him, I didn't go back to sleep. I went downstairs and made a pot of coffee. I sat on my deck, watching the sun come up over the lake. Sarah came out around 7 a.m. She saw the look on my face. What happened? She asked. Caleb called. She froze. She knew the history. She knew the scar tissue. Is he okay? He's broke. Linda kicked him out. He wanted money. He wanted a rescue. What did you do? I said no. Sarah sat down next to me and rested her head on my shoulder. Are you okay? I don't know, I said. And that was the truth. I went to work that day, but I was distracted. I kept looking at my phone. He didn't call back. 3 days later, he showed up at my office. My secretary, Brenda, buzzed me. David, there's a young man here to see you. He says he's your son. Brenda had been with me for 10 years. She knew the story. Her voice was hushed. Send him in, I said. I stood up and buttoned my jacket. I wanted to look professional. I wanted to look like the man I was, not the man he remembered. The door opened. Caleb looked rough. He was 28 now, but he looked older. His hairline was receding. He had dark circles under his eyes. His clothes were rumpled, jeans and a faded hoodie. He smelled like stale cigarettes and desperation. He stopped in the middle of the office, looking around at the mahogany desk, the awards on the wall, the view of the city skyline. Nice place, he said. His voice was raspy. Have a seat, I said, gesturing to the chair opposite my desk. He sat. He didn't slouch like a teenager anymore. He slumped like a defeated man. I didn't think you'd see me, he said. I'm curious, I said. 7 years, Caleb. Why now? She lied, he said. He stared at the floor. She lied about everything. I waited. I wasn't going to help him with this. He had to say it. I found her stash, he said. She was getting evicted. We were packing up the house. I found a box of papers she kept in the attic. Old bank statements. Court documents. He looked up at me, and his eyes were red. I saw the checks, Dad. The child support. You paid. You paid every month. She told me you never paid a dime. She told me we were eating ramen because you were holding out on us. But you were paying $3,000 a month. I nodded. I was. And the college money, he continued. She told me you stole the $529. But I saw the statement. You paid the school. And then I saw the withdrawal slip. She forged my signature to get a refund from the school for the 2nd semester I dropped out. She took the money. 12 grand. She went to Cabo with her boyfriend. I figured she did, I said softly. Why didn't you tell me? He shouted, suddenly angry. Why didn't you fight harder? This was the moment. This was the pivot point. I told you, I said, my voice rising. I told you over and over. You called me a liar. You called me a narcissist. You returned the car. You blocked my number. You sent me a letter threatening a restraining order. Do you remember that letter, Caleb? He flinched. I was a kid. I was brainwashed. You were 21 when you sent that letter, I said. You were a man. And you made a choice. He put his head in his hands. I know. I know I messed up. I'm sorry. Okay? I'm sorry. He looked at me with pleading eyes. But I'm drowning, Dad. She took everything. I have debt in my name that she racked up. She opened credit cards in my name when I was 18. My credit score is 450. I can't rent an apartment. I can't get a car loan. I have nothing. And you want me to fix it? You have money, he said, gesturing around the room. Look at this. You're rich. You can write a check and make this go away. Please. Just give me a fresh start. That's all I'm asking. I'll pay you back. I looked at him. I saw my DNA. I saw the nose that was shaped like mine. I saw the hands that were shaped like my father's. But I also saw the stranger who had watched me cry in a driveway and closed the curtains. I stood up and walked to the safe in the corner. I keyed in the code. 1998, his birth year. Old habits die hard. I pulled out the file. The thick, heavy accordion folder. I walked back and dropped it on the desk with a heavy thud. Open it, I said. He hesitated, then opened the flap. That is every attempt I made, I said. Every birthday card you returned unopened. Every email. Every lawyer's letter begging for visitation enforcement that I never pursued because I didn't want to traumatize you. Look at the receipts, Caleb. He thumbed through them. His hands were shaking. I loved you more than my own life, I said. And you spit in my face for a decade. You didn't just cut me off. You tried to destroy me. You told people I beat you. Did you know that? My business partner asked me about it. Someone told him I used to hit you. Was that you or was that Linda? That was Linda, he whispered. But I didn't correct them. Exactly. I sat back down. I can't give you the money, Caleb. His head snapped up. What? Why? You can afford it. This isn't about affordability. It's about accountability. If I write you a check today, I am teaching you that you can burn bridges, salt the earth, destroy people, and then just say sorry when you need cash. I would be failing you as a father if I did that. So you're going to let me be homeless? To punish me? I'm not punishing you. I'm letting you experience the consequences of your loyalty to a person who used you. You chose her, Caleb. Over and over again. You chose her reality. Now you have to live in it. She's a monster, he cried. I know that now. I'm glad you know it. That's the first step. But the second step is cleaning up your own mess. He stared at me with hatred again. The same look from 7 years ago. You really are a cold bastard. Maybe, I said. Or maybe I'm just a man who learned to respect himself because no one else would. I took a business card out of my drawer. I wrote a name and a number on the back. This is a contact for a debt consolidation service. They are sharks, but they are honest. They can help you freeze the interest and set up a payment plan. And here, I wrote another number. This is the number for a staffing agency. They hire for warehouse work. It's hard labor. It pays $18 an hour. But they hire people with bad credit. I slid the card across the desk. You want a fresh start, Caleb? Earn it. Like I did. When your mother took half my business and left me with debt, I worked. I didn't call my daddy. I worked. He looked at the card. He looked at me. That's it? A job lead. That's more than you gave me for 7 years, I said. He stood up. He grabbed the card and shoved it in his pocket. I hope you rot in this fancy office, he spat. Goodbye, Caleb, I said. He stormed out. The door slammed so hard the frame rattled. I sat there for a long time. The silence in the office was deafening. I felt a tear roll down my cheek. I let it fall. I pulled the file back toward me. I started to put the papers back in order. The birthday cards. The photos. Then I stopped. I took the file over to the shredder in the corner. One by one, I fed the papers into the machine. The birthday cards. The legal letters. The receipts. Whir. Crunch. It took 20 minutes to shred it all. When I was done, the bin was full of confetti. I didn't need the file anymore. I didn't need the proof. Caleb had come back. He had admitted the truth. Linda was exposed. I was vindicated. But vindication didn't feel like triumph. It felt like grief. It felt like the final closing of a book that had been left open for too long. I went home to Sarah that night. We ordered Thai food. We watched a movie. Did he come? She asked during a commercial. Yes. And? He's angry. He's hurting. But he knows the truth now. Did you give him the money? No. She took my hand. That must have been hard. It was, I said. But he needs to become a man. And I need to stay one. Update, 6 months later. I didn't expect to be writing an update to this, but life has a way of surprising you. After Caleb stormed out of my office, I didn't hear from him for 3 months. I assumed he had gone back to the void, or maybe found another relative to leech off of. But then, I got a call from Mark. Mark is the owner of the staffing agency I referred Caleb to. Mark and I go way back. David, Mark said. I just wanted to let you know. Your boy, he's a worker. I froze. He took the job. He did. Showed up the next day. He's been working the loading dock. 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. Hasn't missed a shift. He's quiet, keeps his head down, but he works hard. He's already been promoted to shift lead. I felt a lump in my throat. Thanks, Mark. Keep an eye on him for me. But don't tell him we spoke. You got it. Another 3 months passed. That brings us to last week. I was walking out of the grocery store, loading bags into my trunk. Dad. I turned. Caleb was standing there. He looked different. He had cut his hair short. He was wearing work boots and a flannel shirt. He looked tired, but he looked solid. He had put on some muscle. Hey, I said. He shifted his weight. I wanted to return this. He held out an envelope. What is it? It's the money for the motel. You offered to pay for 2 nights when I called you that first time. I didn't take it then, but I figure I owe you for the advice. I took the envelope. It was thin. Maybe $200. I'm working, he said. At the warehouse. It sucks. My back hurts every day. But I got a studio apartment. It's a rat hole, but it's mine. Mom doesn't have a key. That's good, Caleb. I'm glad. He looked at his boots. I was angry when I left your office. I wanted to burn your building down. But, you were right. About the accountability. He looked up at me. His eyes were clear. I'm not ready to be a family, he said. I have a lot of anger. At her. At myself. And yeah, still a little bit at you, even if it's not fair. I need time. Take all the time you need, I said. But maybe. He paused. Maybe we could get coffee? Not now. But, someday. In a few months. Dutch treat. I smiled. It was the first genuine smile I had given him in a decade. Dutch treat, I agreed. I'd like that. He nodded, turned, and walked away toward a beat-up Ford Taurus that looked like it had 200,000 miles on it. I watched him go. He wasn't the son I had lost. That boy was gone. This was a new man. A man forging himself in the fire, just like I had. I got in my car and looked at the envelope. I didn't open it. I put it in the glove box. I'm not going to deposit that money. I'm going to frame it. Because that $200 is worth more than the millions I have in the bank. It's the price of a soul being reclaimed. I drove home to Sarah. The sun was setting. The lake was glittering. I remembered everything. The pain, the betrayal, the loss. But for the first time in forever, I wasn't carrying it. I had set it down. And maybe, just maybe, Caleb was learning to set his down too. It's a long road back from hell. But at least now, we're both walking in the same direction. Detailed breakdown of the silent years, the context I skipped over. I feel like I need to elaborate on the time between the divorce and the phone call, because a lot of people in my real life, and maybe reading this, think I was too harsh. They think, he's your son, you should have just hugged him. They don't see the granular level of cruelty that occurs in parental alienation. It wasn't just the big moments. It was the daily erosion. I remember when Caleb was 19. I had tickets to a baseball game. World Series. Impossible to get. I paid a fortune. He loved baseball. We used to collect cards together. I texted him, "Hey, I know we aren't talking much, but I have tickets to Game 4. Just you and me. No pressure. Just baseball." He didn't reply for 2 days. Then, on the day of the game, 2 hours before the first pitch, he texted, "Mom says you're trying to buy me off with tickets because you feel guilty about cheating on her." I never cheated. Not once. But Linda had planted that seed so deep, it was a tree now. I went to the game alone. I sat next to an empty seat. A kid about 10 years old was sitting in the row in front of me, wearing an oversized jersey. His dad was buying him a hot dog. The kid looked at his dad like he was Superman. I had to leave in the 3rd inning because I couldn't stop weeping behind my sunglasses. Or the time my mother died. Caleb's grandmother. She adored him. She knit him sweaters, sent him cookies. When she passed, I called Caleb. He sent it to voicemail. I texted him, "Grandma died. The funeral is Thursday." He didn't come. Linda didn't bring him. Later, my sister told me that Linda had told Caleb that Grandma hated him. That Grandma had said he was a disappointment. My mother never said a harsh word about anyone in her life. She died asking for him. "Where's my Cale Bear?" she whispered in the hospice bed. "He's coming, Ma," I lied. "He's on his way." She died before he arrived. That is the anger I hold. Not for the money, but for the stolen moments. For the fact that my mother died thinking her grandson didn't care, and my son lived thinking his grandmother hated him. That is a theft that cannot be repaid with an apology. So when he sat in my office asking for a check, I wasn't seeing a broke kid. I was seeing the result of a poison that had been fed to him, yes, but a poison he had swallowed willingly because it tasted like righteous indignation. He liked being the victim. It was easier than admitting his dad was a good man and his mom was a liar. It was easier to be angry than to be wrong. Breaking that cycle required a shock. It required the rock bottom. If I had given him that money, he would have gone back to Linda. He would have paid off the debt, and she would have weaseled her way back in. Oh, Dad paid? See, he owes us. He knows he was wrong. By forcing him to stand on his own, I forced him to detach from her. He couldn't afford to support her anymore. He couldn't afford to be her emotional spouse. He had to survive. It was the most loving thing I could do. And the most painful. The psychology of Linda. I want to touch on Linda, too. Because it's easy to paint her as a cartoon villain. But she wasn't. She was terrifyingly human. Linda was insecure. Deeply, profoundly insecure. She defined herself by motherhood. When Caleb started growing up, she felt him pulling away. And when my business started taking off, she felt me pulling away, into work. She felt herself shrinking. So she created a world where she was the center. If I was the villain, she was the hero. If Caleb was the victim, she was the savior. She needed him to be broken so she could fix him. I remember finding a stash of rejection letters in her desk when I was moving out. Caleb had applied to a prestigious summer science camp when he was 14. He really wanted to go. The letters said he was accepted. Linda had hidden them. She told him he didn't get in. Why? Because the camp was 4 weeks long. She didn't want him gone for 4 weeks. She wanted him on the couch, watching movies with her, needing her. She sabotaged his success to ensure his dependence. And she did it with the money, too. She didn't just spend the child support on shoes. She spent it on fun. Concert tickets. Dinners out. Trips to amusement parks. She became the Disney parent using my money, while I was the one saying, "We need to save for college." Of course he chose her. Who wouldn't choose the parent who is always fun, always available, and always telling you that you're perfect and the world is out to get you? I was the parent offering vegetables. She was the parent offering candy. But a diet of candy makes you sick. And eventually, your teeth rot. Caleb's teeth had rotted. His life was in decay. And he finally realized that the stomach ache he'd had for 10 years wasn't because of me. It was because of what she was feeding him. The future. I don't know if Caleb and I will ever be close. I don't know if we'll ever toss a baseball again. Too much time has passed. We are different men now. But I have hope. Sarah asks me sometimes if I forgive Linda. No, I say. Forgiveness implies that what she did is okay, or that I've absolved her. I haven't. What she did was abuse. Plain and simple. But I have moved past the hate. Hate is a heavy rock to carry. I've dropped the rock. I'm walking light now. And seeing Caleb in that parking lot, with his callous hands and his cheap car and his pride, that was the first time I felt like maybe, just maybe, the war is over. The survivors are scarred. The landscape is bombed out. But the shooting has stopped. And in the silence, we can finally start to hear ourselves think. If you are a parent going through this, I see you. I know the nights you spend staring at the ceiling. I know the urge to drive by their school or their work just to catch a glimpse. I know the temptation to buy them back. Don't do it. Live your life. Be the best version of yourself. Build your empire, whatever that looks like. Be happy. Because one day, the fog might lift for them. And when it does, they need to see a lighthouse standing strong, not a shipwreck that destroyed itself on the rocks of grief. Be the lighthouse. That's what I tried to be. And finally, after 7 years, I think a ship just spotted my light. Final thoughts on the no-contact movement. I read a lot of posts on here about people going no contact with their toxic parents. And let me be clear, countless parents are toxic, abusive, neglectful, narcissists. They deserve to be cut off. But there is a subset of this movement that has been weaponized. There are kids, adult kids, who are cutting off good, flawed, trying parents because a third party, a partner, an ex-spouse, a therapist with an agenda, has convinced them that any boundary is abuse and any disagreement is gaslighting. It's a tragedy. I was not a perfect father. I worked too much. I was stressed. I probably raised my voice about messy rooms more than I should have. I wasn't emotionally fluent. I was a generic 1990s dad trying to pay the mortgage. But I loved him. I showed up. I provided. And I was erased. To anyone reading this who is the alienated child, take a hard look at the narrative you've been sold. Look at the evidence. Look at the actions, not the words. Who is actually profiting from your isolation? Who gets more of your time/money/energy when you cut the other parent off? Follow the motive. Caleb finally followed the motive. He saw that his isolation from me didn't make him stronger, it made him pray for his mother. It took him losing everything to see who was actually holding the scissors. I'm just glad he survived the cut. Addendum: the logistics of the reunion. People have asked how I handled the awkwardness of the first meeting with Caleb in my office. It wasn't just awkward. It was excruciating. When he first walked in, there was a smell. Not just the cigarettes, but the smell of poverty. It's a specific scent. It's unwashed laundry, damp wool, and stress sweat. I was wearing a $2,000 suit. The visual contrast was a physical barrier between us. I felt guilty for my success in that moment. I felt the urge to apologize for the mahogany desk. But I swallowed it. Because that guilt is what Linda preyed on. I'm sorry I have money is a weakness. I worked for this, and you can too is a lesson. I remember looking at his hands. He had a scar on his thumb. I remembered when he got it. He was 6. He was whittling a stick with a pocket knife I had given him. He slipped. I remembered rushing him to the ER. Holding his hand while he got 3 stitches. Buying him ice cream after. I'm brave, right, Dad? He had asked. The bravest, I had said. Looking at that scar across the desk, I wanted to reach out and touch it. I wanted to trace the white line of tissue and reconnect the timeline. But I kept my hands folded on the desk. Dr. Evans, my therapist, had role-played this with me. If he comes back, Dr. Evans said, he will be regressed. He will act like a child. He will want you to be the parent who fixes it. If you fix it, you confirm the dynamic that he is helpless and you are the utility. So what do? You treat him like an adult. An equal. You offer resources, not solutions. It was the hardest advice I ever followed. When I handed him that card for the staffing agency, my heart was screaming, give him a job. You own a company. You have trucks. Let him drive. But I knew I couldn't. If I hired him, he would be the boss's son. He would be resentful of my authority. The other drivers would hate him. And if he messed up, I'd have to fire him, and we'd be back at square one. He had to get a job where his last name didn't matter. Mark, the agency owner, told me later that Caleb didn't mention me. He applied as Caleb Miller, Linda's maiden name. He got the job on his own merit. He lifted the boxes with his own back. That's why he has pride now. That's why he could look me in the eye in the parking lot. He isn't Caleb, my broken son, anymore. He is Caleb Miller, shift lead. And ironically, by keeping her name, he became the man I always wanted him to be. The irony is not lost on me. A note on Sarah. I need to give credit to Sarah. Step-parents get a bad rap. But the partners of alienated parents are the unsung heroes of this tragedy. Sarah never met Caleb until, well, she still hasn't met him. Not really. She saw him from the window when he came to the office. She had stopped by to bring me lunch. But she lived with his ghost for 5 years. She held me when I woke up from nightmares. She listened to me rant about family court injustice at 1 a.m. She tolerated the fact that I couldn't celebrate Father's Day because it was too painful. She never tried to replace Linda. She never tried to be mom. She just stood beside me. When Caleb called, she was the one who said, "Guard your heart, David. But keep the door unlocked." She is the reason I didn't become bitter. She is the reason I didn't let the hate consume me. She showed me that love could be simple, direct, and undemanding. If you are dating someone with an alienated child, be patient. You are navigating a minefield you didn't plant. But your presence is the only thing keeping them from blowing up. The financial reality. Let's talk numbers. Because money was the weapon. I calculated it once. Between legal fees, child support, the car, the college tuition I paid and lost, and the therapy, the divorce and alienation cost me about $450,000. That's a house. That's a retirement. Linda burned nearly $500,000 of my generated wealth to fuel her vengeance. And in the end, she has nothing. She is renting a condo, working a minimum wage job, and has no relationship with her son. I have my business, my home, my wife, and my self-respect. The ROI of hate is negative. Always. It eats the vessel that holds it. Linda thought she was winning every time she cashed a check. She didn't realize she was selling her future. I hope for her sake, she finds some peace. But I doubt it. Narcissism is a hungry god. It demands constant sacrifice. When Caleb stopped being the sacrifice, she likely turned on herself. Conclusion. So that's the story. 10,000 words, give or take, of a life dismantled and reassembled. It's not a movie. There was no dramatic courtroom confession where Linda broke down and admitted her lies. There was no police chase. There was just a quiet conversation in an office, the sound of a paper shredder, and a handshake in a grocery store parking lot. But that's real life. The biggest victories are quiet. I am writing this from my deck. The sun is down now. Sarah is pouring wine. I'm going to close the laptop. I'm going to drink the wine. And tomorrow, I'm going to work. And maybe, in a few months, I'll have coffee with a young man named Caleb. We'll talk about baseball. We'll talk about work. We won't talk about the past. We've talked enough about that. We'll just sit there, two men, drinking coffee, watching the world go by. And that will be enough. End of log.